the Sorcerer of the Celestial Dragon line. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, Underground Secret Realm 2. Come here, all of you. A wizard with a cold breath appeared outside the venue and said, "There are still dozens of wizards stationed in the hall. Together with those who are out exploring, there are probably hundreds of people in this secret realm." Allen was just an apprentice before, and the information he was exposed to was limited. Now that he has advanced to a formal wizard, he finds that the number of formal wizards in the Five Rings Tower is definitely beyond Allen's imagination. As the largest wizard organization in the eastern region of the wizard continent, a large number of apprentices are recruited every year. Even if most of them will be eliminated, the remaining number is still a terrifying number. This is just a large resource secret realm that has just been developed. The academy also controls a large secret realm that is not inferior in any way, and there are several small secret realms. The number of people stationed alone may exceed 2,000. Joseph, Campbell, Allen, John, your task is to explore the underground secret realm D13 area. The energy monitors placed by the academy have not found energy reactions at the level of second level wizards in this area. Your goal is to explore the structure, resources, and draw a complete map. A combat wizard picked up a list and issued a task while handing a parchment scroll to everyone. The profits from the mission are yours, but please note that you are not allowed to destroy resource points or exterminate them. Once discovered, you are well aware of the consequences. After completing the mission, you will get 10 contribution points. You can check the reward exchange for contribution points at the public notice board in the hall. The group took the parchment scroll one after another. This scroll is a simple map that has been surveyed. In the entire secret realm, only a few areas are marked at present, and many areas are unexplored. The Five-Ring Tower divides the ground area into Area A, which has the highest exploration rate. According to the markings on the map, 50% of the areas have been explored. The area on the ground alone is more than 50,000 square kilometers, and according to calculations, the scope of the underground secret realm is at least 10 times that of the ground secret realm. The area of D13 marked above is about 4,000 square kilometers. The map also marks some high-risk areas. Some people have found high-level creatures in these areas. Some creatures are not weaker than third-level wizards. Who knows what will appear in the secret realm that has been closed for so long. Chip. Start scanning the map, scan the surrounding terrain, and compare. Through a long tunnel, Allen came to the underground world. The underground world was extremely dark. Some luminous spore plants emitted a faint blue light. On the top floor of the underground world, some sunlight mosses and sunlight stones emitted a faint light. The field of vision was greatly limited. Fortunately, the blood of the dragon gave Allen dark vision, although it was not comparable to the ground. The underground secret realm is rich in resources. After Allen scanned it with the chip, he found a lot of magic plants. This is a resource point that has not been plundered by wizards. There is a weak radiation force field in the entire secret realm, and the element concentration is very high. Ordinary people can hardly stay for a long time. It is normal for some high energy magic beasts to appear here. The ancient wizards are really generous. This is a large resource secret realm that merges the underground world and the demi-plane. Allen said secretly after looking around. The conventional secret realm built using the energy of the earth veins will not have such a large space. The underground world here is likely to be the underground part of the previous main material world, and then merged a demi-plane, separated this part from the main material plane, and parasitized on the main world. The Five Rings Tower and the Four Towers Alliance fought for this large secret realm. The main location was the entrance and exit of the secret realm. Although they successfully seized control, the other four Tower Alliances also had the right to use it, but they had to hand over a lot of resources. Dark vision except for Allen. Several other formal wizards used this spell. As for using light spells in this dark underground world, is it because they think they are not dying fast enough? Enhanced perception. Although vision is reliable in most cases, perception is the most important in this situation. Shadow spell. A shadow covered the figure, and Allen's figure had become vague. In this environment, the effect of shadow spells was greatly enhanced, and invisibility spells were not as good as it. The concentration of negative energy in the underground world has increased significantly, and it is much easier to use shadows, necromancy and other spells here. Because they knew the environment they were in, everyone was well prepared. The underground world is very beautiful. Allen saw the magnificent underground caves. These rocky and various underground caves are simply amazing. Under the weak light of the surrounding luminous plants and sunstones, it exudes strange and magnificent colors, which makes the wizards who see the cave for the first time admire it again and again. There are abundant fish in the underground river in the cave. Many fish are translucent, and their internal organs are clearly visible. There are also some fungi growing in the corners. The entrance to the underground world is not very dangerous. Once you leave this area, there are more dangerous species. Scatter. There are bloodthirsty demon bats in front. A wizard who was exploring the way exclaimed. The formal wizards, including Allen, scattered after hearing this, and there were constant flashes of spiritual light. This is to bless simple protective spells. In this dark defense, bloodthirsty demon bats are one of the dangerous creatures. This species belongs to the demonized creatures, living in groups, and their claws and teeth carry viruses. If they are caught, they may be infected. Moreover, most of these bloodthirsty demon bats live in groups. Whether there is any use value, wizards rarely provoke them after encountering them. Not only is there no benefit, but there are also many of them. After they dispersed, a sound of flapping wings came over after a while, and a large group of black and red blood-sucking bats appeared in front of them. There were about 500 or 600 of them, and they were extremely agile in the dark. They were about the size of pigeons, with heads like mice, ears that took up 1/3 of their heads, and keen hearing. They had sharp teeth covered with toxins and bacteria, and a pair of fleshy wings that flapped quickly. Their claws had sharp nails, which were also covered with germs and toxins. For ordinary people, if they were caught, they would probably be infected with diseases or poisoned. Even for formal wizards, if they were caught too many times, it would be very troublesome. Only wizards from the voodoo school would be interested in such things. The group of bats flew over in groups. After the wizards avoided them, they continued to move forward. The underground world was vast, and they began to slowly disperse here. Several wizards chose the same direction as Allen. Look, there is a ruin here. A wizard's eyes lit up, pointing to the ruins not far away. Don't waste your time. This area has been explored on the map. A wizard next to him said, the ruins have been marked on the map. Do you expect others to leave something for you? Let's go to the mission area quickly. At least it is an unexplored virgin land. Chapter 127 Underground Secret Realm 3. The ruins cover an area of 200 to 300 square meters and look like a castle. The main body is made of metal and obsidian, with broken walls and ruins everywhere, as well as some damaged puppets. The energy circuits on the ground can be vaguely seen, and some scrap magic crystals are scattered on the ground. Everyone be careful, another wizard said. After this, you will enter the lion scorpion activity area. In the underground secrets, the lion scorpion is a relatively dangerous species. Adult lion scorpions are 6 to 8 meters long, with a ferocious and cruel temperament. They will actively attack other creatures that invade their territory, use toxins to harm, can manipulate elemental energy, and have wings on their backs. It can fly at low altitude. Its image is a lion body and a scorpion tail, with a pair of huge flesh wings on its back. Its claws and teeth are poisonous, and its tail is extremely poisonous. The strong ones have the strength of formal wizards, but its leader has been solved by the high-level wizards of the academy. It is a behemoth with a body of more than 10 meters, and it is said that it has reached the level of a second-level wizard. Advanced acceleration. Allen cast a spell on himself and turned back to say, we need to hurry up. The base established by the academy is not far ahead. The area of the underground world is too large. The Five Rings Tower has established many safe spots in the underground world. These safe spots not only monitor whether there are high energy creatures around, but also serve as places for supply and rescue. Usually a second level wizard is stationed here, and only wizards of this level can be stationed in the underground world full of crises for a long time. On the stone pillar in front, 3 lion scorpions about 6 meters in size appeared. They have strong bodies like lions, sharp claws, sharp teeth, flashing black and purple scorpion tails, flapping wings, and circling back and forth in the air. Its attacks are poisonous, and it is very troublesome to clean up after being injured. Prepare for battle. The burly combat wizard shouted. It is not easy to deal with flying demonic beasts. Although wizards can fly, they cannot reach their level of flexibility, so defense and counterattack are common methods. Be careful, they can fly. The lion scorpions obviously discovered Allen and his group, and were approaching quickly, with their claws shining with a faint blue luster. Gravity magic. The wizards, including Allen, gathered together, accompanied by a faint spell aura. The wizards had already cast spells. After all, these lion scorpions were not birds, and they could not fly for a long time. Gravity magic would increase the difficulty of their flight, and they would soon land on the ground. It's a good time to stretch your muscles. A combat wizard drew out a long sword with a clang, and then a flash of aura appeared in his hand, and auxiliary spells such as magic weapons, giant force, and cat's grace were cast. This combat wizard was obviously trained by Mentor Connor, and he was the only one who taught combat wizards to like close combat. Whoosh! After approaching the crowd, a lion scorpion accelerated and pounced directly from the sky. The wizard shouted. His body became obviously larger, and the long sword swept across in an instant, and then his body flashed. A stream of smelly blood splashed. The lion scorpion's wings were cut off, and then it kicked the lion scorpion away. A fireball flew by and hit the lion scorpion's body instantly. There was an explosion, and the lion scorpion's broken body was blown away. Beasts are beasts, they don't have any brains. The wizard pouted and wiped the bloodstains on his face. Allen's battle became simpler. Facing the flying lion scorpion, he raised his hand and used a flash spell. These creatures living in the dark area have good eyesight, but strong light can seriously damage their eyes. The lion scorpion, which was blinded instantly, fell to the ground in a panic and fell dizzy. A wizard next to it easily stabbed it with a sword and pierced its heart. Leave quickly. Lion scorpions are social animals. The smell of blood will attract them. I don't want to be besieged, another female wizard said. This area is inhabited by a large number of lion scorpions. Most of the magical creatures in the secret realm have divided their territories. In each area, there is a magical beast that stands at the top of the food chain, and this is the lion scorpion. The group quickly collected the spoils. There are many places on the lion scorpion that can be used, so they were taken away directly. Fortunately, the dimension bags of formal wizards are relatively large. If it were an apprentice, such a large body would not be able to fit in. Allen's group's task is to explore the map. The 5 Rings Tower does not require them to clear all the magical beasts, because these magical beasts are also a resource. As long as their number is controlled, they will continue to produce. We are almost there. A witch took out the map and compared it with the nearby terrain and said to everyone, Allen used the chip to scan all the way, but the underground world was interfered by radiation, and the scanning range was not large. A small hill appeared in front of them not far away. There is a villa-like hut on the hill, covering an area of more than 100 square meters. There is a crystal stone that continues to glow on the roof. The main body of the house is built with obsidian. This ore is extremely abundant in the underground world. It is not only hard, but also has good energy conductivity. Finally, we can take a break, said the brown-haired wizard who had been silent all the way. Being in a dark environment for a long time will make people feel depressed and breathless. There are also unknown things hidden in the darkness, which makes everyone always alert. Squeak. The door opened from the inside, and the hut of the base opened. Then a beautiful young woman with long purple hair came out. Her skin color was a little dark, and her figure was unusually plump. When she walked, her buttocks twisted. She was wearing revealing clothes, revealing most of her high breasts, flaming red lips, and eyes filled with mist. She looked seductive, and her ears were similar to those of an elf. It's a dark elf, a wizard couldn't help but exclaimed. Hearing this, Allen carefully observed the other party's identity. It's just the blood of the dark elves. The 5 Rings Tower has not yet recruited wizards of other races. This witch has the blood of a fused dark elf. There are not many dark elves in the records of wizards. This remote plane is not visited by gods. Without the protection of the Spider Queen Rose, the Dark Elves have long been exterminated by wizards. This wizard should be the result of the transformation of the blood of the Dark Elves in the underground secret realm. After all, the lifespan and beauty of the elves are envied by humans. She wore the badge of a combat wizard on her chest. At this time, she was looking at Allen and his party with interest, and then said with a charming expression, "Little guys, have you seen enough?" The formal wizards shuddered and realized that this beautiful witch was a second-level wizard. Whether in terms of strength or age, she was far superior to everyone present. Her youth and beauty were just superficial. Chapter 128 Underground Secret Realm 4. Come in. After saying that, he turned and walked into the house. Dark elves used to be the same as elves, but they abandoned the main god of elves and chose a Spider Queen Rose. They were insidious, cunning, scheming, and promiscuous. These were the good qualities of dark elves. They were in the chaotic evil camp. After losing the protection of the Spider Queen Rose, they still insisted on this set of rules. The result was predictable. While their cousins on the ground developed very well, although their strength was not as good as that of human wizards, they at least occupied a corner and lived well. Seeing this witch, Allen knew that there were still some dark elves in the underground world. The witch in front of him was not weak. She gave Allen the feeling that she was close to a third-level wizard. Everyone followed the witch's footsteps and entered the hut. Allen kept staring at the witch. After all, the legendary dark elves were extremely promiscuous. Moreover, Allen was also interested in studying the blood of dark elves. Allen had seen ground elves several times, but this was the first time he had met a dark elf, although this witch only had the blood of a dark elf. The witch in front of her was obviously used to everyone's gaze, but Allen's unconcealed gaze still made her feel uncomfortable, as if she was naked and exposed to the air. The witch couldn't help but narrow her eyes and glanced at Allen, then said, "Your task is to explore the nearby terrain. Be careful of lion scorpions and eye demons. Especially the latter. The mental attack of the eye demon should not be underestimated, and some of them are even tainted with the breath of demons, so they are not so easy to deal with." Next, the witch threw a few crystal balls over, with a lazy look. "If you encounter danger, you can use this crystal ball to ask for help. As long as you activate this crystal ball, all crystal balls within a 50-kilometer range will receive the distress signal, and of course they will also ask for help from the nearest base. As for whether you can be rescued, it depends on your luck." After speaking, she waved her hand and said, "If everything is fine, you can go." Then she pointed at Allen with her white finger. Your name is Allen, right? You stay." In the end, Allen was left alone in the gloating eyes of other wizards. Allen's eyes just now were too presumptuous. "Little guy, you are very brave." A playful smile appeared on the corner of the witch's mouth. For such brave guys, the witch likes to use some small tricks to make them look bad and teach them a lesson. Although the Five Rings Tower does not allow high-level wizards to attack low-level wizards at will, as long as their names are not hurt, a small punishment is still acceptable. "Well, I'm really brave," Allen said honestly. The witch in front of him was stunned when he heard it, and her mouth twitched. Then she looked up and down at Allen. "Little guy, you are very naughty, very good." High charm. The witch's eyes became deeper and deeper, and a strange wave instantly affected Allen. Allen only felt that the witch in front of him instantly became more charming and extremely beautiful. Suddenly, he had the idea of being willing to give everything for her. His arms were raised, and his steps were involuntarily wanting to take a step. Warning. Warning. Please note that the host is under mental enchantment. Start the awakening measures. Professor Yang's electric shock awakening method. Crackle. The piercing alarm sounded in Allen's mind, and then an electric shock instantly spread from the spine to the whole body. Allen shuddered directly, and his confused eyes instantly became clear. Seeing the steps that had been taken, and the arms raised, Allen's expression was very embarrassed. The witch's expression, which was originally ready to watch the show, was instantly stagnant, and she looked at Allen in surprise. "What's the situation? Why did my enchantment fail? Is my charm greatly reduced, or is it that this kid's will is so firm?" However, with a glance, she saw that Allen's loose wizard robe was bulging high, and a playful smile hung on the corner of his mouth again. "It seems that I'm still very charming. This kid has a strong will." In just a moment, many thoughts flashed through the witch's mind. She gave up the idea of continuing to act. After the first failure, she didn't have the face to act a second time. A senior wizard didn't even care about her face. Seeing that Allen resisted her temptation, Catherine became more interested in Allen. After Allen merged with the blood of the red dragon, his body began to change subtly. The most obvious thing was that he grew taller and his appearance became more handsome, which greatly increased his appeal to women. Fortunately, Allen and his apprentices were in a period of rapid development. Although the changes were great, they were not too conspicuous. In addition to these, the dragon's desire also affected him. The most obvious thing was that he was increasingly unable to control his desire. Go away. Which Catherine said nothing more. With a wave of her finger, a force directly imprisoned Allen, and then with a wave of her hand, a beautiful parabola instantly flew far away. On a rocky beach, Allen stroked his forehead and stood up from the big pit. This woman must have used gravity magic to smash such a big pit. Ouch, it's all swollen. A laugh came from a distance. Just as Allen sorted out his clothes and walked forward for a distance, several wizards who were traveling with Allen caught up. Seeing these people holding back their laughter, Allen rolled his eyes and said, "Laugh. It's so uncomfortable to hold it back. Haha, let me laugh for a while." The combat wizard covered his stomach and patted Alu's shoulder and laughed, then gave a thumbs up and said, "You are awesome." The others nodded in agreement. Although the Five Rings Tower does not allow high-level wizards to attack low-level wizards at will, small punishments are still possible. Now let's assign tasks. The brown-haired wizard suggested. He opened the parchment scroll and pointed to the mission area and said, D13 covers an area of more than 4,000 square kilometers. There are 7 of us in total, and each of us will be assigned an area. Be careful, there are many dark creatures here, and I don't want to find your remains in those dirty monster nests. The combat wizard said seriously with a serious face. By the way, there are still some remaining dark elves here. If you are interested, he said, and raised his eyebrows at Allen. Several wizards around laughed. Allen rolled his eyes weakly. Everyone has chosen an area. Well, let's do this. Remember the location of the base. If you need to repair, return here. If you find something beyond your ability, ask for help from the base. Safety comes first. After all, your life is your own. Another wizard looked at everyone and said. The group dispersed here, and each went to their own area. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 I Demon 1. Allen checked the direction, compared the distance, and walked northeast. After walking for several kilometers, this place was far enough away from the base, and Allen began to explore carefully. Chip. Start detailed scanning. An invisible light wave spread out from Allen as the center. Allen plunged into the dark area. As he went deeper and deeper, more and more demon beasts appeared around him. Allen hid if he could avoid them, and quickly dealt with those that he couldn't avoid. He sneaked all the way. Fortunately he didn't encounter groups of demon beasts. The chip continuously fed back the scanned terrain to Allen's brain. Allen's fingers flashed with spiritual light, and the surrounding terrain began to appear on the parchment scroll. This kind of magic map is very strange. Ilu sealed the surrounding mirror image into the scroll, and a rough topographic map will automatically appear on the scroll. The map that appeared on the parchment scroll looked more like a hand-drawn one, and it couldn't save the mirror image, but this level was enough for use. Ding. Man-made buildings were found. The mechanical voice of the chip reminded. Allen took a look and couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise, "What good luck. There is an ancient relic here." Looking at the location marked on the chip, it was about 700 meters away from Allen. There was a small mound in front of him, which blocked the ruins. Allen directly activated his innate spell, and a flash of light flashed. Then he cast an acceleration spell, and the whole person rushed over like a bow and arrow. Quickly bypassing the small hill, a passage appeared in front of him. After walking in, a huge abandoned device appeared in front of him. This is a metal creation, more than 10 meters long, and the surface has been severely rusted, revealing the structure inside. Broken pipes can be seen inside. The material of the pipes is somewhat like some kind of crystal. There are also some broken pipes not far away, which look like they were deliberately destroyed. The part connected to the foundation is still there, and most of the others have disappeared. There is also a lot of animal feces around, and some broken bones are scattered around. Beep. Warning. There are a lot of high energy reactions around. Please leave as soon as possible. Please leave as soon as possible. Beep. The species is approaching at high speed. It is expected to encounter the host in 30 seconds. Please prepare as soon as possible. On the light blue map in front of him, red dots were marked one by one, and the closest distance to Allen was only tens of meters. Without time to think, Allen flicked his fingers lightly, and a fireball flew out instantly. With a bang, the monster running in the front was blown away. Then the light came on, and Allen could clearly see the creatures in the dark. It was a group of various underground species, great dwarfs, underground salamanders, and a disgusting species, which was the devil's claw. Allen found several different underground species in bits and pieces. How could these different species appear here together? Allen was puzzled. The devil's claw is a monster that has mutated due to underground radiation and ecological environment. It has keen hearing, can walk upright, has a pair of terrifying giant claws, a sharp bird beak, a pair of compound eyes, and a layer of grey hard shell outside its body. Nearly 3 meters tall, Allen's face changed slightly when he saw the devil's claw. Devil's claw usually live in groups, with 5 to 20 in a nest. The number of red dots marked on the chip has exceeded 20. Swamp magic. A little spiritual light filled with earth element flew out and instantly landed in front of the group of monsters. The monsters in front had no time to stop and rushed directly into the swamp. Allen ignored it, and the spiritual light in his hand continued to emerge. The next moment, the spell was completed in an instant. Flash magic. Firestorm. Devil's claw is afraid of strong light. Their eyes have degenerated very small after living underground for a long time. When they suddenly see strong light, they will go blind in an instant. Blindness caused the group of monsters to fall into chaos, and then the firestorm enveloped all of them. A burnt smell filled the cave, mixed with some meat fragrance. After the chip scan, most of the monsters had lost signs of life. After the spell energy was exhausted, Allen stood on the still hot ground and killed the monsters that were not dead yet. The doubts in his heart did not decrease at all. The monsters here were from 6 or 7 different species. It was not easy to gather these different species together, unless, at this moment, Allen's brain seemed to be hit hard by a hammer. The severe pain made Allen's body unstable. Then his eyes went black, and he felt dizzy. A warm feeling flowed out of his nose. After being attacked, Allen did not dare to stay in place. He rolled on the ground. Then, there were explosions from the place where he just stood, and flying stones hit Allen. Mind shock, demon. At this time, even if Allen did not see it, he could guess what kind of monster it was. The most dangerous monster underground, the demon. Like his cousin, the abyss demon, this demon living underground also likes to dominate other intelligent creatures. Legend has it that the demons once formed a huge empire, the soul-sucking monster empire, which enslaved many other species including humans, but this empire was later destroyed. There are some subspecies of beholders, such as the tentacle evil eye, which is widely distributed in the underground world, but its power to manipulate the mind is far less than that of beholders. The underground beholders mainly enslave the grey dwarves and other species. Although its strength is not as good as that of the abyss beholders, it is already a monster at the top of the food chain underground. Enduring the intense pain, Allen did not dare to stop. There were constant explosions on the ground behind him. He dodged continuously and finally hid behind the ruins after a jump. At this time, the tearing pain in his mind faded slightly. He did not have time to wipe the bloodstains on his face. Enduring the swelling pain in his brain, Allen cast a protective spell, Mind Protection. The location of the beholder has been marked on the map in front of him. This cunning monster hid behind a stone pillar. The 2 stone pillars formed a blind spot in vision. The beholder was hiding there just now. Mirror image. Allen summoned a mirror image, and then cast a shadow spell on himself, commanding the mirror image to rush out from the other side, and then quietly hid in the shadows. The moment the mirror rushed out, it was hit by several beams of fire. After barely dodging them, it was finally hit by one of them. The moment the magic mirror was hit, it turned into fluorescent dots and dissipated. Allen was gradually approaching the eye demon in the shadows, and found that the eye demon that was tricked instantly began to scan around. The huge eyes were motionless, and the more than a dozen eyes on the tentacles stared at the surroundings. Seeing that the wizard was not found, a white ripple instantly spread out. Telepathy at this time, Allen was only 10 meters away from the eye demon. Seeing the eye demon use this spell, Allen, who knew he could not dodge it, shook the sword in his hand lightly. Advanced acceleration, a flash of light passed by, and the man had already accelerated and rushed out. Chapter 130 Eye Demon 2. The beholder's close combat capability is not strong. Although its shell is hard, the dragon veins have given Allen great strength, so it is not difficult to break this hard shell. Psychic shock. Seeing Allen rushing in front of him, the beholder instantly released a spell, and the purple psychological shock instantly hit Allen, but Allen, who had added psychological protection, didn't care. Allen slashed the long sword horizontally with an expressionless face, and a dazzling light emerged. The tentacles of the beholder were instantly cut off, and black and purple blood splashed. Several small beams of light hit the dragon scale leather armor, causing ripples. Allen turned sideways to avoid the light from the main eye, and stabbed the long sword in his hand instantly. The sharp sword pierced through the open mouth of the beholder, and then pierced into the brain. With a slight movement of his wrist, the sharp sword was already stirring inside, and then quickly distanced himself. The eye demon that was fatally wounded in front of him did not die immediately. It struggled frantically to attack Allen. Its tentacles swung in the air, and its huge spherical body also swayed. Finally, it fell down with a pop. Only a few tentacles were still twitching slightly. He rubbed the pain in his temple, and summoned a water bowl to clear the blood stains on his face. Allen put the eye demon away. Although the underground eye demon is not as good as the abyss eye demon, it is also a good thing. This is not a good place for dissection. It can be sold at a good price when taken back. After cleaning up the battlefield, and rescanning the chip, there were no other monsters. Allen came to the ruins. Carefully approaching this huge device, the chip reminded that the radiation value here is much higher than the surrounding area. Is this Kelton magic steel? There are so many, and they actually used Kelton magic steel to cast the shell directly. They are really rich. Allen picked up the long sword and knocked on the huge shell of the device in front of him. It's a pity that the corrosion is so serious, otherwise just these Kelton magic steels would be a considerable fortune. Looking at the severely corroded Kelton magic steel, Allen sighed. With a gentle touch, the corroded metal fragments were removed, revealing the relatively intact part inside. The energy transmission device in front of him had completely failed, and most of the materials had lost their enchanting effects. With a gentle pinch of his hand, a hole was directly broken in the pipe inside. He broke off the crystal fixed inside, and observed it carefully. With a flash of inspiration in his hand, the crystal shattered into powder, and slipped out of his hand. The magic crystal with exhausted energy. The technical level is much stronger than it is now. Chip. Scan the surrounding energy points. An invisible ripple spread, and a light spot appeared in front of Allen's eyes, and the location was right in front of him. Sure enough, this is the ground vein node. Allen nodded secretly. Clang. Allen grabbed a piece of metal plate with corroded surface, exerted force with his arm, and directly tore it open. The relatively intact structure inside was revealed. It's magic pattern engraving technology, but it's much cruder than the technology in the world of Abyss. Hey, this piece of Kelton magic steel seems to be usable. Let's try it after reinfusing it with magic. Is this thorium? It's a pity that it has been completely corroded, otherwise such a large piece would be worth thousands of magic stones. Most of the abandoned ruins have been corroded and have no value. It's a daydream to want to repair them. Allen took action directly and dismantled the ruins with his bare hands, collecting the materials that could be used again. Although the thing in front of him is now a pile of broken copper and iron, the raw materials used alone are valuable. There is also a ground vein node here. Is this device used to extract energy? But what to do after extracting energy? Seeing that the ground vein node in front of him had been dismantled, Allen was a little confused. He removed a layer of outer shell on the ground vein node, and a metal box appeared in front of him. The metal box was completely sealed and made of metal lead. It was not light in his hand. After scanning the chip, Allen found that the radiation of the box was actually the highest. It can't be radioactive material. Sealed metal lead box. This thing was also a thing to store radioactive materials in the previous life. The cracks in the box were also cast in metal. Allen thought about it and didn't open it rashly. He packed all the items collected from the ruins and the lead box into a dimensional bag, patted his butt and stood up, ready to go to the next place. This area has been recorded. With the help of the chip, Allen's speed may be the fastest. The underground world is also divided into day and night. The underground world at night is completely plunged into darkness. The sun moss and sunstone have become dim and dull, and some fluorescent fungi emit a faint blue light. After Allen scanned the surrounding terrain, he prepared to go back. The way back was much smoother. After marking the surrounding monster gathering points, Allen directly bypassed them. With the help of advanced acceleration and light body skills, Allen's speed has become very fast. Even if they encounter a small number of demonized beasts and underground monsters on the road, they can't catch up with Allen's speed. Soon a bright light appeared in the field of vision, which was the light of the academy base. The base has appeared in front of him. When Allen returned to the base, the other wizards had already returned here. This task is not difficult, but it takes a long time. It will take about 10 days to complete. Allen nodded to the others, and then he saw the bandage wrapped on the arm of the combat wizard in the corner. I encountered a group of lion scorpions. I didn't expect that there was a lion scorpion nest in that place. The combat wizard smiled, and his expression was eager to try. Sure enough, combat wizards are a group of combat maniacs. So many lion scorpions. If all are eliminated, the materials harvested alone will be valuable. The combat wizard's name is Victor. He belongs to the combat wizard and is said to have received the inheritance of the ancient red robe wizard. The witch is called Gina and the brown wizard is called Hans. They look taciturn, but the negative energy on their bodies is off the charts. These few should be the strongest people besides Allen. There is a room in the back. You can go and rest if you need it. Catherine's cold voice came over. Catherine, with a charming face, appeared behind everyone. Her charming appearance, sexy dress, and cold voice made her have a fatal attraction. The eyes like ice knives swept over, and several formal wizards lowered their heads and dared not look at each other. Only Allen was still looking up and down. Seeing Catherine frowning slightly, Allen turned his eyes away. Supplies are sold here, and the materials of the monsters you hunt are also purchased. There are too many monsters in this underground secret place, and the academy wants to control it at a low level. Allen hunted dozens of monsters of various kinds today, and many of them were directly bypassed. After being closed for so long and unmanaged, the monsters here have begun to overflow. Hearing about the purchase of monsters, several wizards hurriedly took out the monster corpses in the dimensional bag. After all, this was only the first day, and the dimensional bag was already filled with a large number of monsters. If they were not cleaned up, there would be no place to store the monsters they killed next time. The eye demon is worth 50 magic stones, the lion scorpion is worth 10, and the others are open. Here is the price list. You can decide for yourself. Catherine threw a sheepskin scroll over and turned into the house. Chapter 131 Mission. When they came to the house, everyone took out the monster materials from the dimensional bag. A strong smell of blood spread. Catherine wrinkled her nose, looked at the monsters piled on the ground, and said casually, the ones with high integrity and well preserved are priced according to the price list, and those with more than half damaged are only 30% of the price. You have all learned anatomy, right? Now deal with these monsters, clean the internal organs, separate the meat, and make the rest of the potion. The meat will be sent to the cafeteria as food later. Catherine stood aside and directed. Then she seemed to think of something. She said, has no one encountered dark elves? There are still a few dark elves in the underground secret realm. If you encounter them, catch them. These drow are still competent supervisors. She threw the processed monster corpses into the warehouse and said, okay, you go and rest. After that, she turned and went to the back room. The purchase of these monsters is settled uniformly, and you can only get them when you leave the underground secret realm and return to the academy. Otherwise, there is no way to prepare so many magic stones in the base alone. Allen handed in all the monsters, except the eye demon. He was the one who handed in the most monsters among the formal wizards. The second was Victor. This guy would not let go of any monsters he encountered. Most of the other wizards only had a few. After all, they were not all combat wizards, and were not so belligerent. In the room, Wizard Catherine made a record, and curled her lips. Such a large secret academy only sent a few people. How long will it take to completely control it? The slender fingers gracefully tapped the dressing mirror on the table, and the mirror surface immediately fluctuated like water ripples. Then a figure appeared in it. The little guys are back. There are no casualties. The figure in the mirror was an old man in a white wizard robe. He nodded when he heard it. I know, Catherine. Try to avoid casualties. The academy is short of manpower now, and needs them to grow up as soon as possible. I know. I have given them things to ask for help. Be careful. I will feel it if they encounter danger. Have the foreign wizards been expelled now? Catherine said. The white-robed wizard hesitated, then said, not yet. This secret realm is unexpectedly large. So far, we have found 3 entrances in total. We control one, another is controlled by the Wizard Alliance, and the remaining one is controlled by us, and the Four Towers Alliance. So those members of the Wizard Alliance have also intervened? Catherine frowned. It is no longer realistic for us to monopolize the secret realm. Who knows how many exits this secret realm has? The only thing we can do now is to seize the territory. The old man in white robe shook his head helplessly. In the underground base, Allen quickly found a resting room. Although it does not look big from the outside, this small house with space folding spells is far larger than the appearance outside. It seems that the academy is preparing to stay for a long time, and a permanent station has been built. After looking at the environment, Allen closed the door and sat cross-legged. Chip. Display the map scanned today. Soon a translucent 3-dimensional map appeared in front of him. Allen did not stop all the way today and ran to many places. Comparing the designated task scope, he has completed 1/3. With the help of the chip, Allen's speed is unmatched by those wizards. He is not going to waste all his time here. There are countless resources in the underground secret realm, and he is going to plunder more. Nothing happened all night. The next day, the magic clock woke Allen up early. When he went out, he found that other wizards also got up early and smiled at each other. The opening of a new secret realm often means a lot of opportunities. There is no such generous reward for taking tasks on weekdays. In addition, the secret realm is in the pioneering period, and everyone is ready to take advantage of this opportunity to make a fortune. Little guys. The academy supplies have been delivered. There are regeneration potions, life potions, mana awakening potions, detoxification potions, and some magic items. You can buy them if you need them. Which Catherine was still lazily lying on a rocking chair, stroking a black cat in her hand. This black cat is obviously a demonized creature, and its radiation fluctuations have reached the level of a formal wizard. It is obviously annoyed by Catherine's hand, and its eyes show anger and humiliation. When it sees Allen observing itself, it stands up and bared its teeth, and then is pressed down by a big hand. There is a list over there. Go and see it yourself. Allen glanced at the black cat and went to buy the necessary supplies. This black cat was obviously imprisoned by the malicious transformation spell and turned into a black cat. As for its original appearance, Allen couldn't guess it, but as a formal wizard level species, it turned into a cat and played with it wantonly. It fell into the hands of a wizard close to level 3, and this life is considered GG. Pick up the list and take a look. Most of them are low-level demonized items, protective rings with protection against evil, twisting force fields or anti-poison necklaces, detection necklaces, divine walking shoes, etc. Although they are not good things, they can be used in the underground secret realm, and the price is as black as always. Look at the mark. It is produced by the Alchemy Tower. The academy was really calculating. It issued tasks for wizards to explore the secret realm and pay some magic stones. These wizards got benefits. If they wanted to get more, they needed to buy equipment, and the magic stones they earned were handed over to the academy. In the end, the academy provided a permission for wizards to explore the secret realm. Not only did they not spend magic stones, but they also opened up the secret realm and obtained a large number of items and resources sold by wizards. First, wizards got training. Second, the secret realm was opened up. Third, they sold logistics materials, sold low-level magic items, and purchased a large number of monster resources. They earned a lot of magic stones by going in and out. Fourth, wizards also got benefits and also obtained a lot of resource magic stones. Fifth, the secret realm was cleaned up and started to get on the right track. This is just the most basic benefit. There are many other things that will take a long time to show up, and the academy paid only to open a permission. This economics took into account all aspects. It was also a talent to play this hand. After buying the supplies, Allen turned and left. When leaving, Catherine glanced at Allen again. It seemed that he was most interested in Allen among all the formal wizards in this batch. Today's mission is much simpler. We explore along another route, turn on the chip's scanning function to the maximum, and kill the simple monsters we encounter, and avoid the more difficult ones. However, the density of monsters here is really high, and we rushed forward several times to kill all the monsters. With Allen's physical fitness, he is simply a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus Rex. Many times, spells are not as fast as directly slashing with a sword. Chapter 132 Mithril. Just after Allen killed several tentacle evil eyes, the chip detected a mineral vein. This mineral vein is deep underground. If there is no fracture in the bottom layer here, Allen will not find it easily. The fractured bottom layer should be affected by the earthquake, and a huge crack has been opened. The mineral vein is hidden in it for dozens of meters. Allen casually cast the falling feather spell. Standing at the mouth of the crack, he jumped lightly and jumped directly down. After entering the crack, Allen summoned a light spell, and the soft light illuminated the surrounding rock walls. During the descent, Allen saw some metal ores scattered on the cross-section of the rock wall, and the more he went down, most of the types of ores are copper iron ore, and the next is silver ore. I'm so lucky, this is actually a rich mine. After looking at the results of the chip scan, Allen rubbed his chin. After all, wizards are a profession that consumes a lot of resources. The reason why wizards are called wizards is because wizards are krypton gold. Soon Allen reached the bottom of the crack. A vein of minerals was exposed on the rock wall. The mineral layer was not thick. The chip calculated that this vein was just a macro vein. There were many such veins in the underground world. After all, the underground world was the area with the richest mineral resources in the material world. After checking this macro vein, Allen found many signs of gnawing on the exposed ore bed. After observing these signs, the gnawing ores accounted for about a quarter of the entire vein. This was bitten off. Did they eat metal minerals? Could it be a gold-eating beast? Allen checked the surrounding signs and guessed secretly. The gold-eating beast is a demon beast that likes to eat gold, iron and metal. It is generally 5 meters long and 1.5 meters high. It looks like a leopard, agile, with sharp teeth and claws. It is not strong, but its body is as hard as iron. The biggest feature of this gold-eating beast is that it devours gold and iron, and then after digestion, it will excrete it again. The excreted metal is refined, and it also has a slight magic power. It is a secondary magic metal. Because of this special body structure, this gold-eating beast was transformed by ancient wizards and kept in large numbers. It is released in the mining area, and then it gnaws various metals in the ore veins to obtain a large amount of refined metal. Sometimes, these gold-eating beasts will also excrete some strange alloys, but the number is very rare. Allen began to follow the traces and search under the cracks. After walking along the cracks for hundreds of meters, Allen soon found a nest of gold-eating beasts in a cave. The claws of the gold-eating beasts are sharp, and it is easy to dig rock veins. This cave was dug by the gold-eating beasts. After checking, there are more than 20 gold-eating beasts in this nest, and a large amount of refined metals are scattered outside the cave. Refined iron and refined copper are the largest in number. A rough calculation shows that there are more than 10 tons scattered everywhere. The second is silver, and the amount of silver is also not small. A rough calculation shows that it is close to several tons. So many of them are probably the product of this nest of gold-eating beasts for more than 10 years. As an ideal and ambitious young wizard, Allen has set a small goal for himself, to own a floating city of his own. The discovery of this small mineral vein made him feel that he was one step closer to building a floating city. The amount of steel consumed to build a floating city is very amazing. Even if it is a primary basic floating city, Allen has deleted and optimized it according to the drawings of the floating city in the Tebas world. The value of all materials converted is about 200 billion gold coins, and this is still not including the core of the floating city, Miser. Many of these materials cannot be found in the material world at all, or they are priced out of the market. These things may require Allen to travel through other planes to find. The most basic requirement for a floating city is to be self-sufficient, have a complete ecosystem, and rift in the astral world. With a happy face, he collected the feces of these gold-eating beasts. No, it is refined metal blocks. Unexpected wealth always makes people feel refreshed. Controlling the wizard's hand, he quickly collected the metal blocks on the ground. Fortunately, Allen carried enough dimensional bags, otherwise he couldn't hold so many metals. This is. When picking up the metal, Allen found that a piece of silver was different from the other silver blocks. The color was brighter, and the surface did not have the black color of other silver ingots, after being exposed to the air for a long time. Instead, it was a bright white color like new. Suddenly, he felt nervous and worried. He carefully took the metal block in his hand and checked it. He kept testing it in various ways, and Allen's eyes became brighter. Mithril, this is mithril. A group of large golden words suddenly popped up in his mind. This extremely precious magic metal has an outrageously low output and an equally high price. Mithril may appear as a companion, or of silver mines. It is generally only found in the plane where elemental tide has appeared. Mithril was found in this micro vein. Allen had to praise his luck. He now suspected that he should have inherited the blood of the golden dragon. Only the gold dragon is born with luck. The other 5 colored dragons don't have this treatment. Mithril is hard to come by. The construction of the floating city requires a lot of mithril. If you want to raise a huge city, you need to build a large enough floating ring, and the main material of the floating ring is mithril. He looked up and estimated the reserves of this vein. As long as all of it is mined, he can at least save many years of struggle. As for the 5-ring tower, sorry, what I found belongs to me. As long as it is mined secretly, they won't know at all. The mining of mithril is more labor intensive, mainly because mithril ore is much harder than ordinary ore. The mining method of the 5-ring tower will create some constructed puppets, and the refining method is the key. With the current technology of the 5-ring tower, it takes 17 processes to refine it. Tebas is a little better, and it also requires 11 processes. However, the gold-eating beast found here can greatly reduce the refining process of mithril, and it only takes 5 to 6 processes to complete. Believe me, no spellcaster can refuse mithril. Mithril is actually very close to silver, and is actually an allotropic element. You can simply understand it as 2 substances of carbon, graphite and diamond. The same substance, but with completely different physical and chemical properties. According to the information Allen obtained, mithril is the product of element mutation deep underground, and the cause of element mutation is element tide. This metal is extremely rare, but widely distributed. It can be found in any world where element tide has appeared, but its content is very touching. Chapter 133 Mining. So far, there is no way to detect mithril in the mines. If you want to find mithril, you can only rely on illusory luck. This metal is not only important to wizards, but other professions are also eager to learn about it, because its most well-known characteristic is that it is much harder than steel, but as light as a feather. In fact, this metaphor is a bit exaggerated. Although it is very light, it is also 1/3 of steel. Its real value lies in its extremely amazing magic conductivity and ductility, as well as its anti-oxidation property. It will not undergo any oxidation reaction with oxygen, will never change color, and its physical properties are extremely stable. Many magic constructs that can run for thousands of years are because they use mithril. Dwarves are very fond of mithril. There was once an armor made of mithril that was light in weight, had high defense, and even had amazing resistance to spells. As for its final destination, according to an insider who did not want to be named, this mithril armor was recycled by a wizard. In the eyes of wizards, mithril should be used in magic constructs, and other applications are heresy. Now the most important thing is to quickly mine this micro vein. After some calculations, if Allen relied on himself, it would take at least a week to use magic to mine this small vein, but there was a nest of gold-eating beasts here. With the help of these little treasures, Allen was confident that he could mine all the ore within 1 to 2 days. As for refining, that would be a matter for the future. After collecting the metal, Allen calculated and activated the magic in his hand, Monster Charm. More than 20 gold-eating beasts were easily controlled by Allen, and then according to the trend of the veins calculated by the chip, mining began from the area with the richest ore. Group enchantment sharp, refreshing, giant strength. More than 20 gold-eating beasts with various states attached began to work quickly. The ore excavated this time did not need to be swallowed and refined. Time was running out, so they had to collect the original ore first. The claws of the gold-eating beasts with the sharp magic became extremely sharp, and their mining speed was faster than before. With a slight scratch of the claws, a big hole was dug out of the hard rock wall like tofu. The ore in the rock layer was constantly being excavated with the naked eye. The ore piled up on the ground soon formed a small hill. Allen also joined the mining. Relying on the effect of the spell, he was faster than those gold-eating beasts. The mineral veins rich in minerals have been marked by the chip. The powerful power given by the red dragon bloodline and the magic weapon effect attached to the pickaxe made him mining like a fish in water. The quality of these silver mines is good, and the silver content has reached 15%. There is only a small amount of mithril ore in every cubic meter of silver ore. Allen worked overtime for a whole day and night. When this micro vein was mined out, more than 1,000 cubic meters of ore had been dug, and silver ore accounted for a quarter of the amount. Now the vein is in a mess, and basically all the valuable ores have been dug out by him. The rest are some waste ores with very low content, and no mining value. The harvest is the most pleasant. Now his worry is how to take all these ores away. After all, although the dimensional bag he carries is not small, it is not enough to hold so many ores. Allen, who has a greedy character like a dragon, is unwilling to give up any of the wealth he has obtained. Take away the valuable ores now, and leave the rest of the less valuable ones here for now. It would be great if there is also a demi-plane. A vast demi-plane can hold more than one vein, not to mention 10 or 100 veins. Allen sighed helplessly. A demi-plane can be born from the main plane, and there are also strong people who use space development technology to create a dedicated demi-plane. Natural demi-planes are rare, so in most cases, they are opened up by the caster themselves, and it takes at least legendary strength to open up a demi-plane. Collect all the high-value minerals. These gold-eating beasts keep some for themselves, and sell the rest to the academy. After collecting them, Allen searched around under the crack again, but did not find anything valuable. Not a bad harvest. Allen clapped his hands, and flew out of the crack directly. This area has been roughly cleaned up by high-level wizards. There are no high-level demonic beasts. Allen and his people are actually here to pick up the leftovers. The way back was smooth. On the way, we passed a small hill and killed several harpies. These harpies were different from their cousins on the ground. They had more ferocious faces, with bird bodies on the upper body and women on the lower body. Their legs were eagle claws, which were closer to animals, and not very intelligent. When we arrived at the base, Allen burned today's map. With the help of the chip, Allen had already explored the terrain. He didn't plan to do this task for a long time starting tomorrow. Allen didn't come back yesterday. When he returned to the base, he found that he was not the only one who spent the night outside. There were only 3 people in the base. The others were still outside, cleaning up the monster corpses and selling them to Catherine. Catherine didn't ask Allen why he didn't come back yesterday, but looked at Allen with a more playful look. After selling the unnecessary things and buying a few dimensional bags, Allen prepared to go back to sleep. A day and a night of high-intensity mining made him very tired. When he woke up in the morning, Allen found that there was another wizard who had not returned, but he did not hear any distress signals. It was not until everyone had breakfast and was ready to go look for him that the brown-haired wizard Hans finally arrived. There was an uncontrollable excitement on his face. It seemed that this wizard Hans had found something good in 3 days. The other wizards did not ask, which Catherine just glanced at him with interest and then continued to squint her eyes and lay lazily on the rocking chair. The poor cat turned into a black cat statue today. This wizard Catherine is now more and more like a cat. He does not care what these wizards find in the secret realm. Occasionally, some good things will be missed by high-level wizards, but this is because this wizard is lucky. In this case, the academy also allows these opportunities to be privately owned. The Five Rings Tower is not that kind of black wizard, and the atmosphere in the academy is not that kind of naked jungle lore. After living for so long, Allen also has a clear understanding of the bottom line of the academy. Seeing Han's unexpected gains, other wizards around were obviously more active in going out today. Some even prepared several times the supplies. It seemed that these people were going to be active outside for a long time. As for Allen, he didn't plan to pick up other people's leftovers. It was not easy to come to the underground secret realm to explore the wasteland. Would he just squat in the back to pick up garbage? This was not Allen's style. After leaving the base, Allen directly used the dragon wing transformation. Although the flying spell can also fly, the speed is about the same as that of ordinary birds, and it also consumes magic power continuously. Except for high-level wizards who use it to travel, low-level wizards don't have the capital to do so. However, Allen with dragon wings can fly much faster than the wizard's flying spell, and the mana consumption is very low, so he can travel for a long time. With the blessing of the light body spell and the acceleration spell, Elu shook his wings slightly, and his figure was like a sharp sword. He flew a long distance in an instant, and then flapped his wings a few times, and his figure disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 134, Remarks on the Release. This is the first time I write a book, and it is also the first time I sign a contract and put it on the shelves. It is not easy to think about it. My mother was in the hospital some time ago, so the updates were sluggish, and then the clicks and recommendation votes were directly cut in half, so the author is also prepared for the first order of this book. At the same time, I would like to thank all the book friends for their silent support for recommendation votes, and many book friends for their awards. Next, I will keep updating twice a day, because the author is a clumsy person, and typing too slowly. In addition, I remind everyone not to buy health products again. Especially beware of the small molecule peptides and apple stem cells recommended by relatives. Don't buy them at all. As a victim, I would like to remind everyone here. My mother suffers from chronic nephritis, which is a complication caused by diabetes. She has been ill for more than 10 years, and has been taking medicine to maintain her condition. She got better last year, but she was a little tired of taking Chinese medicine every day. My cousin recommended me Jike's small molecule peptides and apple stem cells. At that time, she said that it can enhance immunity and supplement nutrition. She said that many people have recovered after taking it, and then recommended it to my mother. While selling it, she said that her whole family took it and all the minor ailments on their bodies were cured. Some people can cure cancer and uremia by taking it. I don't believe a word of this exaggerated statement, but my mother is buying it. She wants to eat it with all her heart, and no matter how I say it, it doesn't make sense. If I say too much, she will say that I'm an unfilial child. I went online to check it out. In 2017, Mijike was defined as a pyramid scheme. The court ruled that my mother didn't believe it. She also said that her own niece, how could she cheat her? There was no way, so I asked about the price. A box cost more than 500 yuan. I thought it was a health product, so I spent some money. Then I prepared to buy a month's supply. I thought that, if it didn't work, after taking it for a month, my mother would stop eating it. My cousin said that 1 month was too short and there was no effect, so I had to buy 2 months of medicine, which cost about 4,700 yuan. Then I started taking this medicine. There was no problem at the beginning. After taking it for a week, I felt a little sleepy. My cousin said it improved my sleep. After taking it for 10 days, I started to feel nauseous and bloated. At this time, she said it was a detoxification reaction, and I had to keep taking it. This was a normal phenomenon. I told her not to take it, and my mother got angry, saying that the doctor had said it was detoxification and I just had to endure it. After taking it for another day, she started vomiting directly. This time I forced my mother to go to the hospital for hospitalization. She believed that it was a detoxification reaction until she arrived at the hospital. I forced her to do an examination. The doctor looked at the results and said directly that she should do dialysis. This time she finally understood and became uremia directly. I said so much not to be pitiful, but to remind everyone, never buy health supplements again. Don't buy. Don't buy. Don't buy. That kind of thing is at best a comfort medicine. It's good if you don't have any problems after taking it. If you have any problems after taking it, it's too late to regret it. Having said so much, everyone is tired. I will release it on New Year's Day. I ask for your support. The first order is really important. There will be 5 updates on the shelves tomorrow. This is to squeeze out the time code. I will try to update more in the future. Fumeng thanks you. In addition, thank you Yuwen, thank you editor Cheyenne Key, and thank you editor-in-chief. Chapter 135 Drow. Dark region. Allen opened up a hidden cave, then took out some materials to set up a temporary teleportation array. This technology was learned in the world of Tibis. It is convenient and fast, but the distance is limited and can only be used once. It is suitable for low-level wizards to arrange in advance. High-level wizards have teleportation, which is much more convenient than this. Then he closed the cave, flapped his wings behind him, and flew directly into the air. Wind barrier, advanced acceleration, detection. After casting several spells, Allen's figure shot out directly, gently waving his dragon wings. The speed was already very amazing. The surrounding wind element barrier separated the oncoming air and turned into an elliptical shield around the body. Not only can it reduce air resistance, but it also has a certain defensive ability. The dragon wings waved gently, and Allen turned flexibly in the air. There were not many flying monsters in the underground secret realm. There were only a few kinds of monsters, such as harpies, lion scorpions, and bloodthirsty bats. Moreover, their speed was far less than Allen's. He could get rid of them just by relying on speed. So Allen was like a wild horse that had broken free from its stiffness, rushing around in this underground secret realm, causing the surrounding demon beasts to riot wildly. However, the speed difference was too large, which was of no use at all. The chip opened the scan to the maximum and reminded when it found something valuable. This area was still an unexplored area, and no high-level wizard had come to clean it up yet. Allen had already found several demon beasts close to the strength of a second-level wizard. The underground secret realm was rich in negative energy, which gave birth to many demon plants. Allen collected the high-value ones and let go of the low-value ones. It turned out that the undeveloped virgin land had a huge harvest. In just half a day, Allen's harvest was comparable to the harvest of the previous 2 days. The underground world was rich in ores, especially magic ores. Allen, who had been spoiled by his appetite, no longer cared much about these ordinary items. After picking a few ghost mushrooms, Allen took out the magic clock to check. It was already 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and the brightness of the sunlight moth had weakened. A cave was found on the map scanned by the chip, not far from here. When he came to the cave, it was a cave of more than 100 square meters, with hard rock walls and very dry inside. He lit a bonfire and set up warning spells around it. Allen began to prepare food. Many fungi grew in the underground secret realm, most of which were poisonous. Allen spent a while to collect a lot of edible fungi. He cooked a pot of thick mushroom soup and had a delicious meal with the white bread bought at the base. He arranged a defensive array and maze outside, and Allen was ready to rest here. Various magic creatures were very active in the underground secret realm at night. More than one magic beast passed by the cave where Allen was resting, but Allen cast an illusion in the outside world to hide and close the cave. Ding. Host, please pay attention. A creature has triggered a magic trap. A creature has triggered a magic trap. Allen was not asleep. In this dangerous area, it is very dangerous to completely relax. As soon as the chip sounded the alarm, he turned over and stood up. After checking that a magic trap in the northeast was triggered, his fingers flashed with light, and a shadow spell wrapped Allen. His figure was hidden in the darkness, and then he began to walk towards the direction of the triggering trap. The smell of blood. It's not the smell of monsters. He has smelled the blood of underground monsters a lot recently. It is acidic blood with a fishy smell, and the smell here is like the smell of humans. With the blessing of dark vision, some fluorescent plants around provided a faint blue light. A slender figure fell to the ground, and his body had been frozen by the frost trap. With the faint light, Allen saw a human figure. Dark skin, pointy ears. This is a drow. Allen stretched out his hand and pinched the pointy ears. It felt soft and fun. Then he turned the person in front of him over. The delicate facial features looked very beautiful. The fuzz on his face and the childishness between his eyebrows showed that this drow was probably underage or just an adult. The skin was not dark black, but a little brownish red. It must be said that the drow had a good figure. After glancing at the drow's body, the chip gave the height and three-dimensional information. This drow was wearing a leather armor made from the abdomen of an underground salamander. There was a large pool of blood on his chest, and a half-broken arrow could be seen. He was wearing a battle skirt, long leather boots and leather pants, and a small crossbow tied to his thigh. However, half of his body was frozen, and the breath of this drow was getting weaker. Experimental materials delivered to your door. Is it poisoned? Allen looked at the blackened blood stains and his face changed. Such good experimental materials are greatly reduced by being contaminated by toxins. Using the wizard's hand to move the drow elf to the cave, Allen checked it. The drow elf was seriously injured, with wounds on the chest, abdomen and thighs. It seemed that he had experienced a very fierce battle. The most serious one was the arrow wound on the chest, which was very close to the heart. After thinking about it, Allen took out a bottle of antidote potion and a bottle of recovery potion, pried open the opponent's mouth, and forced it down. Then a flash of inspiration flashed in his hand. False life, removed toxins. The drow elf, who was originally breathing faintly, breathed steadily. The false life could keep her alive and not die immediately, but if she was not treated quickly, she would still die after the spell effect wore off. Then a trace of dark green blood flowed out of the wound. Put on gloves and take out a scalpel. Oh no, it was a scalpel. Gently cut the leather armor at the wound on her chest. The scalpel was extremely sharp, and it was easy to cut a big hole in the leather armor, and then slowly took out the broken arrow along the wound. Seeing that the blood gradually turned into normal red, Allen pointed his finger. Hydrotherapy, a gentle water element attached to the wound. The blood was stopped, and the wound began to heal gradually under the effect of the potion. It took some time to search all the weapons on the drow elf. Allen looked at the pile of various daggers, crossbows, blades, and poison needles, and was slightly shocked. This drow elf hid so many things on her body. She cast a sleeping spell. This elf would not wake up until tomorrow at the earliest. She cast a confinement spell to trap her in place. Allen yawned and repaired the spell trap. He checked that there were no other humanoid creatures around. Because he saved a drow elf, he was worried that someone would come to search in the middle of the night. He stopped resting and sat cross-legged with his eyes closed to rest. The next day, the underground secret realm's daylight moss emitted a soft light. Allen checked the drow elf. The wound had begun to scab over, and the false lifetime had expired. However, the chip scan showed that the life was stable, and it seemed that it had escaped the near-death state. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Drow Elves 2, First Order. With a groan of pain, the drow in front of him slowly opened his eyes. His black pupils were still a little confused. You're awake. Percent and amp. Hash. After adapting to the light, the drow's pupils finally focused on Allen. You've recovered well. It seems that the healing potion is working well, Allen said to himself. The drow, who had just woken up, looked at the strange species in front of him, a little terrified, and wanted to take out his weapon, only to find that his body could not move. I don't understand the common language. Looking at the elf in front of him, Aelu waved his hand. Understanding language, now you can understand it, right? Who are you? Let me go. I'm the most beloved daughter of grandmother Antana. You let me go. Otherwise my guards will come and kill you. A lowly male. The drow who had just woken up threatened directly. I think you don't understand the situation yet. Allen shook his head at the little wildcat with its thorns blown. The pain deepened. Secondary lightning ball, a blue-white lightning ball, was thrown directly at the drow. The drow, who had just recovered, twitched all over and foamed at the mouth. It took a long time for him to recover. Damn you. You really don't remember. Allen shook his head at the twitching drow, heated up the mushroom soup left over from last night, and soaked the bread in it. He no longer cared about the drow who was receiving electric shock therapy, and started to eat breakfast. After 2 consecutive electric shocks, the drow, who had just recovered and was very weak, was even more unbearable. His whole body was like being soaked in water, and his exaggerated chest kept rising and falling. His pale face was covered with sweat, and his eyes were staring at the top of the cave. It won't be broken now, isn't it? Said. That drow are very durable. Didn't I use it wrong? The notes left by the predecessors evaluated that the drow's endurance was second only to that of orcs. Looking at the drow who was about to break down, Allen muttered to himself. After a while, the drow recovered and looked at Allen fiercely. If ice could kill, Allen would have been dead by now. Now you know what's going on. I'll ask you a question. Do you hear me? You can lie and try to trick a wizard, but the consequences will be he. The moment the drow heard the wizard's words, his face was horrified. Allen, who looked at the much more honest drow with satisfaction, began to ask questions. Name. Bus. Where are you from? How did you get here? I'm from Talon City. I was ambushed when I was going to complete the trial of the coming of age ceremony, and I accidentally ran here. The drow looked at Allen with some fear and didn't want to say it, but when he saw Allen's raised finger, he bit his lip and said the answer. Where is Talon City? Allen asked with his eyes fixed on her. 120 kilometers to the northeast. It took Allen less than an hour to get the answer he wanted. During this time, the elf wanted to deceive Allen, but Allen asked her repeatedly and revealed her flaws, and then she enjoyed another electric shock therapy. Looking at the drow elves who were in a very bad state, Allen said with interest, what should we do with a drow elf who has just reached adulthood and is a top grade product? Please, let me go. My mother will pay the ransom. Looking at the wizard in front of him, Biss felt that this was a big devil. TSK. This won't do. Will the wizard be short of money? This is a rare experimental material. I haven't dissected a drow elf yet. Look at this skin, so smooth and elastic. I have a good idea. Hearing Allen's words, the drow elf was already trembling with fear. Seeing that the effect was good, Allen continued. Let's talk about it. You are my captive now. Now you have 2 choices. The first is to become my experimental material. Don't worry, I will guarantee your life safety, but only life. After the experiment, I will give you freedom. After saying that, Allen looked at the drow elf in front of him with expectation. The drow elf, who was still in shock, shook his head quickly. No, I don't want to be a test subject. What a pity. I still want to try the blood transformation technique. Allen said with some disappointment. Since you don't choose the first option, there is only the second option. The second option is to sign a contract with me, become my servant, and serve me. The normal lifespan of you drow elves is 500 years, so serve me for 200 years. Don't worry, I won't use you as an experimental material. Allen looked at the drow elf in front of him with a smile. Isn't 200 years too long? The drow elf said hesitantly. Too long? I think it's reasonable. How long do you think is appropriate? I'm a very democratic person, and will ask for your opinion. Allen still said with a smile. Looking at Allen's smiling face, the drow elf swallowed his saliva and said hesitantly, is 1 year okay? Sure. Hearing Allen's agreement, the drow elf was full of joy. You don't even need a year. Just cooperate with me to complete this experiment, and you will be free in a week. Allen nodded and said. The drow elf, who was still full of joy just now, immediately shouted. No, I don't want to be a test subject. I don't want to be a test subject. Hearing Allen's next words, the drow elf was obviously panicked. Her body twisted uncontrollably, trying to break free from the restraints, but with her current strength as a mere knight, she couldn't break free at all. Such a beautiful elf. Oh, by the way, I know a way to make jewelry called elf tears, which is said to require the eyeballs of elves, and that kind of gem is extremely beautiful. Allen took out a scalpel with a cold glow and looked up and down at the drow in front of him. His eyes seemed to be wondering how to cut. Hearing what Elu said, it seemed that he wanted to dig out her eyes. The drow finally collapsed, and she suddenly lowered her voice and said in a panic, "Stop, stop, don't dig my eyes, I promise you." The scalpel that was close at hand stopped. Then she spread her hands and said with a smile, "You see, I'm very democratic and will not force people. I like drow elves like you who know the times. Isn't it just being a maid? What a good job." A group of people line up to become one. Then sign this contract. A wicked smile appeared at the corner of Allen's mouth. The drow elf signed his name on the contract and ripped a drop of blood on it. The contract suddenly burned with a ball of blue flame and soon turned into ashes. However, a mysterious mark appeared on the drow elf's forehead and then disappeared in a flash. Chapter 137 Drow Elves 3. First Order. Seeing the contract completed, Allen snapped his fingers and dispersed the energy field that bound her. "This is your breakfast. After you finish eating, prepare to leave here. By the way, who ambushed you?" Allen took out some food and handed it to the newly recruited maid. "I don't know, but I feel it should be my kind." "Master, are you human?" Bess asked Allen, who was obviously different from herself, while eating. "Yes, human." "Aren't there humans in the underground world?" Allen nodded. "This is the first time I have seen a human. I don't know if there are humans in the underground world, but there are no humans in Terran City." "What races are there in Terran City, and how many are there?" Allen asked with interest. "Great dwarves, drow elves, minotaurs, cave dwellers, etc." Drow elves, one of the main intelligent races in the underground world, are seen by the outside world as inherently evil, cruel, selfish, lewd, and promiscuous. They are an intelligent race that is difficult to deal with. They believe in the Spider Queen Rose. The entire race is still a matriarchal society. Women have supreme rights, and the matriarch of each family is Rose's priest. They have a strict hierarchy and social order, and female elves maintain their rule over male elves with absolute superiority. Conspiracy and betrayal are the norm for this race, because the main god they believe in controls conspiracy and betrayal, and basically betrayal and conspiracy happen all the time. However, this world is different. After losing the protection of the Spider Queen Rose, this group of drow elves still did not change this way, and the consequence is that their strength is getting weaker and weaker. Through this understanding, Allen has roughly known the strength of Talon City. The drow elves have not produced priests for a long time. Now they can only rely on blood to cast spells, and can only cast a limited number of spell-like abilities. When Bess finished eating, Allen returned her weapon to her, and then packed up and prepared to go to Talon City. Seeing Allen turned around, Bess quietly pulled out the dagger, approached carefully, and then jumped up suddenly. At the moment, when the sharp blade was about to see blood, Bess's body stiffened and fell heavily to the ground. The next moment, she let out a painful scream. Looking at the drow who wanted to attack him, Allen curled his lips with disdain. "Haha, you underestimate the wizard's contract too much." The secret mark on Bess's forehead emitted bursts of red light, and you can tell from her expression that she didn't feel good. "Disobedient little thing, you will be punished for being naughty," Allen said with a smile. Ego's black tentacles. Pitch black energy tentacles suddenly shot out from the ground. The drow elves, who were wailing on the ground the moment before, burst into panicked exclamations the next moment, their voices trembling a little. "What the hell is this thing? Let me go. No. Ah, it's Sachi. Haha. Woo woo. It's so uncomfortable. I can't stand it. Let me go. Ah, no. Why am I out of strength? It's so hot. Please don't do it. Oh. Master, I know I was wrong. Master, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have sneak attacked you. I was wrong. Forgive me. Ah, let me go." But in an instant, Bess was entangled by more than a dozen negative energy tentacles. Allen learned this spell in the library of the Lich Mentor Banda. Negative energy has the characteristic of absorbing energy, and it is difficult to break free once entangled. Allen also improved this spell. The negative energy tentacles are more tough and flexible, and their energy absorption is also much stronger. Not only does it absorb energy, but also physical strength. You have to watch with interest as the elf begs for mercy under the entanglement of the tentacles. After she is severely punished, the negative energy tentacles are used to whip the elf's perky buttocks. Then she is put down. Facing this wild and untamed little wildcat, I caught it and took it back to train it slowly. The life of a wizard is very boring. With such a little wildcat, Allen believes that his future life will definitely be very good. He has already developed a complete training plan. Today is a really happy day. Of course, this is only for Allen. For the drow elf Biss, who is blushing and angry next to him. Everything that happened in the past 2 days is a nightmare. You will definitely not believe it. Last night, a cute little wildcat came to the outside of my camp, and then I got a well-behaved and beautiful little maid. Don't be so depressed. Come on, smile for the master. After all, I saved you. Is this how you treat your savior? You actually want to stab me with that dagger? Are you repaying kindness with hatred? Besides, what's wrong with being a maid? At least you are safe now. Allen shrugged his shoulders. The words he said made the drow grit his teeth. If possible, I believe she would kill Allen with the poisoned dagger without hesitation. Unfortunately, she still doesn't know that Allen's close combat strength is much stronger than hers. This is a demon. This is what Biss thought in her heart. Then he was despicable and shameless. He took advantage of her injury to capture her, coerced her, and tortured her in various ways to force her to sign the contract. After gaining the ability to move, her first thought was to kill this human, but she fell into the trap of this demon again, and then she was severely trained and taught a lesson. The human in front of her has been labeled as insidious and cunning in her eyes. Pay attention to these words. They are not derogatory words for drow elves. They have always regarded conspiracy and betrayal as virtues. Seeing Allen's smug expression, Biss gritted her teeth, her neat silver teeth creaking, but when she thought about the dark life she would face in the future, she felt depressed again. Snap. Just when Biss was worrying about her miserable life in the future, Allen suddenly patted her on the head. Hey, hurry up, lead the way. We are going to Talon City today. Allen wanted to get more benefits by running so far this time. What benefits can compare to a whole city now? Since the city of the drow elves was discovered, Allen must go and see it. To be honest, even if this city is finally controlled by the Five Rings Tower, Allen will get a lot of benefits. Allen does not have the strength to occupy a city now. Maybe he can wait until he becomes a legend. Seeing the little maid with a wronged and reluctant face leading the way in front, Allen was not relieved. This little wildcat that has not been completely tamed will not be honest, but if she is honest, how can he find an excuse to train her? How could such an upright and kind wizard like him train a little wildcat for no reason? Well, I'm such a handsome and upright spellcaster. Chapter 138 My Dream, First Order. In the dark region, Allen and Biss were heading to Talon City. Suddenly, Allen paused, grabbed Biss, turned around, and hid behind a stone pillar. What's wrong? At this time, the two hid behind the stone pillar. Allen put one hand around her waist, and Biss was looking at Aelu with a puzzled look. Be careful, there are people there. Allen leaned close to her ear and said carefully. Chip, mark the target location around. Just now, the chip reminded that there were lurkers hidden around. On the light blue map, several red bright spots were marked. After scanning and magnifying the chip, Allen had seen several lurkers, a group of drow elves wearing leather armor. But it seems that someone doesn't want you to go back alive. It is obvious that these drow elves are here to deal with Biss, but these few people want to deal with wizards. Allen pouted. Vertigo, flame orb. Now that the location is known, it is not a problem for the caster to solve a problem that can be solved by a few spells. After stunning several lurkers, he waved his hand and threw several flame beads. The power of the flame beads used by Allen at this time was far beyond that of the apprentice period, and it was enough to deal with these lurkers whose strength was not even that of the Great Knight. One by one, the human-shaped torches were lit, and the air was filled with the smell of barbecue. Several lurkers struggled for a few times, and then fell silent. Why is he so powerful? What should I do? Seeing Allen easily burn several lurkers who were not much weaker than himself into charcoal, Biss suddenly became listless. Because she found that even the Great Mistress was not the opponent of this hateful wizard, and she might live under his shadow for a long time in the future. Even if the contract expires in 200 years, whether he can get freedom depends on his mood. This is over. It seems that I can't escape from the clutches of the devil in this life. I can't step on this wizard and whip him with my beloved whip! Exclamation mark. Allen walked over and identified the bodies. They were all male drow elves. Allen turned around and asked, "Do you recognize these drow elves? They are all burnt to charcoal." "How can I recognize them?" Biss complained after looking at the charcoal bodies with disgust, but still squatted down to check. After looking through them, because the whole body had turned into charcoal, there was nothing valuable to find. The weapons were just ordinary weapons, which had melted and deformed under the burning of the magic flame. Since there is nothing to find, let's go, but we need to be faster. Allen looked at the map. It is very likely that we will not be able to reach the destination today at a speed of more than 100 kilometers. Change the way. How to go? Biss looked at Allen in confusion. Allen smiled slightly and directly activated the power of his bloodline. A feeling of swelling came from behind. Sizzle, a pair of huge flesh wings opened from behind Allen. Allen's breath instantly became violent. The surging breath directly suppressed the drow elves and made them breathless. They looked at Allen in amazement. Shadow tentacles with a casual gesture, he tied up the little maid lying on the ground. Allen reached out and grabbed another part. Biss, who already had a fear of being sold, was weak and had no power to resist. She looked at the tentacles with horror. With a flap of wings, Allen had already taken Biss up. The drow elves were slender and tall. Although their breasts were a bit foul, they were not heavy. Light body technique, acceleration technique, wind element barrier. Okay, we should be able to reach Talon City soon at this speed. With a flap of wings, Allen had already carried the terrified Biss towards Talon City. Talon City, this city belongs to the drow elves. It is a typical drow elf city, which is built entirely of obsidian. There are many statues of the Spider Queen Rose in the city, and in the center of the city is a huge temple. However, the temple at this time did not have the solemnity of the past. The temple was filled with a bloody smell, and the blood had dyed the hall red. Tap, tap. There was a sound of footsteps, and a sturdy figure appeared in the hall. "Master Warrior, we have completely controlled the city. Finally, Ankana's people have been wiped out. Now only her little daughter is out to participate in the coming of age trial. There is no news yet, but I have sent someone there. I believe there will be good news soon. Thank you for your hard work. This time we launched a coup to completely destroy the matriarchal system. The drow elves need a new order." A male drow elf in a robe nodded and said. Then he shouted loudly to the numerous drow elves in the hall, "My fellow compatriots, my brothers and sisters, conspiracy and betrayal can only make us weaker. Look at what these women have done. We are the great drow elves, once the kings of the underground world, but now we are so weak that even the great dwarves have gradually begun to provoke us. Under the leadership of this group of women, we are keen on infighting, killing, and conspiracy. Men are insulted wantonly and killed for the slightest dissatisfaction, while women are high above. Brothers, compatriots, it is time to change the cruel, desperate, rotten, and smelly reality. We need to resist and overthrow these maggots that oppress us. Freedom, democracy, friendship, family affection, bravery, equality, and self-reliance are what we need in society. Fraud, betrayal, and conspiracy are reversing history and will eventually be abandoned by the times. We should not fall into despair and be unable to extricate ourselves. We need a society of equality, freedom, and full of human touch and family affection, rather than being occupied by conspiracy and betrayal all day long. We don't want to live in a precarious situation, without dignity, like a walking corpse without a soul. I dream that one day, I hope our race can become strong and truly dominate our own destiny. I dream that one day, in this hall, including in the city, all the drow elves can stand together equally, instead of women being superior. I dream that one day, in this city, this underground world, the drow elves will no longer have betrayal, conspiracy, and oppression. I dream that one day, all drow elves will no longer be evaluated by their gender, but by the quality of their character. Today, I have a dream. I dream that one day, the drow elves will change, give up those conspiracies and murders, intrigues, and be able to join hands to create our beautiful home. Today I have a dream. I dream that one day, the valleys will rise, the mountains will fall, the rough and tortuous roads will become smooth, and the glory will be revealed and shine all over the earth. Today, we take up arms to realize our dream. The night will eventually dissipate, and the dawn will shine on the earth. The night will eventually dissipate, and the dawn will shine on the earth. The crowd below shouted fanatically. Chapter 139 Treasure Room 1. First Order. Allen stood on the dome of the temple, hiding in the darkness where the fire could not reach, staring at the drow on the high platform in amazement. Martin Luther King? He murmured unconsciously. Do you know him? Bus asked in surprise after hearing what Allen said. What's his name? Allen, who had reacted, widened his eyes. Didn't you just say his name? His name is Martin, the chief warrior of the family, but I didn't expect that he hid so deeply and betrayed the mistress and the family. Biss gritted his teeth and looked at the figure who was speaking. You are also courting death. Without the divine power given by Rose, you don't know how to change and still insist on your so-called traditions. Now you are suffering the consequences. The group of people below will never support you again. Even if you appear in the next moment, you will be torn to pieces by them. Allen looked at the fanatical drow below and said solemnly, this Martin Luther King could actually change the nature of the drow. If it were a single wizard or a few wizards, they could do it, but this person changed thousands of people. This is definitely not the result of a speech. Allen felt a wave of mana emanating from the drow, and as the wave spread, the drow became more and more fanatical. Chip. Analyze the spell effect. Ding. Turn on. Spell analysis calculation. Data analysis in progress. Spell fluctuation comparison. Data analysis completed. The spell effect is mass mental suggestion, mass fanaticism. Then the chip's data calculation was calculated quickly. After a series of data emerged, there was already a red area on the map in front of Allen. The entire temple was in the red area. Fuck, this range is too exaggerated. Allen hid in the dark and couldn't help smacking his lips. The spell of mass mental suggestion is not difficult, but not many people learn it because it can only cover a 3*3 area. This temple is built with marble and covers an area of about 20,000 square feet. Now this spell actually covers the entire temple. Allen looked at the drow with a serious expression. Although this spell is only auxiliary and can be successfully released by a formal wizard, the super large scale spell in front of him cannot be released even by wizards who specialize in the mind system. This is not something that can be achieved by hard work, but a problem of talent. While Allen was hiding in the dome to observe, several other figures in black robes also came to Talon City. Their aura was completely different from Allen's aura, and their radioactivity was more than 10 times higher than Allen's. The moment they entered the chip's scanning range, Allen knew that with such a high radiation source, the chip reminded Allen at the first time. These wizards also had a lot of monsters, undead and ghosts mixed in their bodies. Allen recognized them at a glance. They were black wizards. It seems that I ran a little far this time and actually ran into a black wizard. Dark wizards like to use various monsters and some bloody and cruel methods to refine potions. This kind of potion contains a lot of monsters, dead spirits and ghosts. Therefore, they often use it and are already stained with a lot of breath. This is almost impossible to change. If a mortal with keen perception encounters a dark wizard, he will see ghosts, bones, and blood seize on them. These dark wizards will not consider removing these things at all. They even study how to use these various negative energies around their bodies to make them similar to the effect of the devil's blasphemous aura. Some people who are not sure of their will fall into fear and hallucinations when they approach them. This is something that only some evil beings in the lower plane have. Huh. What are they doing here? Allen looked at several dark wizards in surprise. Not far away, these black wizards in black robes did not cover up at all and swaggered towards the temple. Other races in the city had already fled when the drow elves were in civil strife. Most of the drow elves were concentrated in the temple, and there were not many people in the city. Cry. A sharp arrow sounded, which was a warning from the army outside. Ordinary troops could not stop the black wizards, and they could not even slow down a little. Howl of Shadows, a grey magic aura spread quickly, and as the aura spread, the army of the drow elves fell to the ground like dominoes. The leading general was furious, and with a wave of his hand, a rain of swords shot over. But everything was in vain. Protective arrows, distorted force field to low-level spells blocked all the rain of arrows, and then black fireballs continued to explode in the crowd. The drow elves in the hall quickly went to support, but Allen was not optimistic about them. The black wizards advanced very quickly, and defeated several interceptions in a short time. The black wizard's goal was very clear, which was this hall, and these black wizards were quite familiar with it. As more and more drow elves appeared, the speed of the black wizards finally slowed down, and spellcasters also appeared among the drow elves, but most of these spellcasters had spell-like abilities, attaching dark energy to arrows or other spell-like abilities. The most eye-catching one was Martin. Although this drow elf did not use attack spells, various group spells continued. His arrival directly stabilized the situation. Although the drow elves were still retreating, they had the power to fight back. Okay, let's take a look now. You should be familiar with this place. Allen looked at it for a while, and couldn't tell the winner, so he directly pulled Biss down with a reluctant face. One of the two sides was her clansman, but he had betrayed her family. She wanted to hang these traitors, and the other side was a black wizard, the kind of blood red that looked palpitating. The two easily came to the back hall, and didn't go anywhere else. For wizards, knowledge and resources are the most important, so Elu went directly to the library of the temple. This is the largest library in the entire city. The drow elves are a race that believes that divine authority is above all else, so the library and treasure room of the temple are definitely important assets of the entire city. After many twists and turns, Allen arrived at the treasure room under the guidance of Biss. Several drow warriors were guarding the door outside the treasure room. Allen raised his finger. Charming human, since the awakening of the red dragon bloodline, Allen found that it was much easier to cast spells that required mental judgment, and he easily controlled several drow warriors. Open the door. I'm sorry, sir. The door to the treasure room is controlled by the high priest, and we don't have the key. A drow elf with a somewhat dull expression replied. What a trouble. Allen frowned a little after looking at the mechanism door in front of him. This mechanism unlocking technique could not open it. It seems that we can only use the old method. Chapter 140 Treasure Room 2. 15 feet of silence. Exploding fireball. The huge explosion was confined to a very small area, filled with smoke and dust. When the dust cleared, a big hole had been blown out of the originally closed mechanism door. There was nothing that a fireball spell couldn't solve. If there was, then another one would do it. Okay, you guys stay here and watch. Bridget, let's go in. After instructing several guards to continue guarding the gate, Allen pulled the stunned Bridget directly into the treasure room. After entering, Allen flicked his finger and an illusion was cast. The magic flashed, and the door returned to its original state. However, this was just an illusion. As long as you touch it with your hand, you will find that there is nothing here. Entering the treasure room, Allen felt dizzy for a while. When he saw it clearly, his eyes were full of stars. There was a mountain of gold in the treasure room. Resisting the urge to pounce on it, Allen twisted Bridget's arm hard. Ah, it hurts. Stop it. Bridget, who was also in a daze, finally woke up. Allen let go of his hand. It seems to be real, not an illusion. Why don't you twist your arm? It hurts so much. The little wildcat kept needing the place where Allen twisted it. You are stupid. It hurts so much to twist yourself. Allen answered as a matter of course. I will bite you to death. The little wildcat, whose spines exploded instantly, could no longer bear it and pounced directly. Touch of shadow, a black hand was launched and instantly entangled her. Let me go. Ah. You want to let me go? Haha, don't. Hearing Biss's cry, Allen didn't take it to heart. He found that this little maid liked this feeling a little. Otherwise she had suffered several times. Why did she make the same mistake every time? Then, there is only one truth. She likes this feeling. It's just that this little wildcat has a temper. She will definitely not say it if she likes it. So what can she do? She will seize the opportunity to make mistakes. Looking at Biss, who was having fun, as a kind master, such a small request can still be met. Of course, she will definitely not admit it. Seeing the room full of gold products, Allen was overjoyed. Although the purchasing power of gold is not as good as magic stones, it still needs a lot of common materials to build the floating city. These golds are a good choice, whether to buy building materials or pay for labor. In addition to gold, the most abundant thing here is gems. The underground secret realm is rich in various minerals and gems. The gems here are dedicated to the Spider Queen Rose, so these drow elves will not take out inferior products. The various gems here are large grained gems. Allen found several pigeon egg sized magic rubies with extremely high purity. It contains abundant elemental energy. Such a magic gem requires at least 300 magic stones inside the 5-ring tower. The most exaggerated one is a water blue magic gem. At first glance, the inside of the gem is like a clear spring, as big as a baby's fist. He happily put this magic gem into his pocket. Looking at the little wildcat who was already exhausted, Allen snapped his fingers and put her down. But as soon as he put her down, the little wildcat who was exhausted just now instantly pounced on the gold mountain. Mine. Mine. All mine. Seeing the little maid rolling around in the pile of gems and gold with excitement, Allen held his forehead. Sure enough, women and dragons all like these shiny things. But Allen seemed to have forgotten that his performance just now was not much different from Bridget's. Allen looked at her with a playful look on his face. After the little maid's excitement passed, he slowly said, "Hurry up, we don't have much time. Before those black wizards attack, put all these gold and jewelry in. If you perform well, I will take out some gold and jewelry as your collection." After saying that, he threw a dimensional bag to the little maid, then turned and walked into the next room. This room was much smaller than the treasure room. There were many boxes here. When he opened a box casually, colorful light instantly spread out. After adapting for a while, Allen found that it was all piled with magic crystals. The magic crystals didn't bother to look carefully. Allen quickly opened the other boxes. After a while, the whole room reflected colorful light. More than half of the boxes in the room were filled with various magic crystals. The other boxes contained well-made weapons and armor, as well as many silk-like cloths. Ordinary cloths would not be piled here. Allen scanned it with a chip and found that it was spider silk. The cloth was thin and light, and it felt like nothing in his hand. He tore it gently, and the cloth was tight without any signs of breaking. It was very tough, and guided the elemental energy to attach to the cloth. And it was easy to engrave the runes on the cloth. Good stuff. These cloths are the best materials for making wizard robes. After a simple test, Allen's eyes lit up. The drow elves have a lot of good things, and this cloth is the first time I've seen it. As for those weapons and armors, most of them were made of rare metals. Allen even found a mithril chainmail. Sure enough, the richest is still the temple. Although he had obtained a lot of mithril, he still felt extravagant when he saw a chainmail made of mithril. After checking, Allen began to move the items in the treasure room into the dimensional bag. The accumulation of the drow elves for thousands of years was indeed huge. If all the jewelry and gold in it were converted into gold coins, it would be estimated to be worth millions. After putting away the things and waking up the little maid who was still dreaming and giggling, Allen prepared to go to the next location. He casually set up a spell trap in the house and turned to leave the treasure room. Outside the treasure room, several temple guards were still holding on outside. Outside the temple, violent spell fluctuations and various screams were heard. Seeing that the battle was still going on, Allen did not stay. This time the target was the library of the temple. The library of the drow elves was located on the right side of the temple. Due to a series of changes during this period, the library had been unguarded for a long time. Allen walked in swaggeringly. He picked up the books on the bookshelf and flipped through them. The books were in the language of the High Elves. After flipping through them casually, he found that the books recorded here were actually the teachings of the Spider Queen Rose, as well as various poems, most of which were used to praise the Spider Queen Rose. Looking at the huge library in front of him, Allen felt a headache. Only now did he realize that he had made an empirical mistake. He thought that the library of the drow elves, like the Five Rings Tower, contained books about spells, but he did not expect that this was a temple, and most of the books were about the Spider Queen Rose. He went to the front desk and looked through the library's book catalog and finally found a category on the last page, Divine Magic and Extraordinary Power. Chapter 141 Dark Wizard 1. Catalog, Divine Magic and Supernatural Powers. Row 6, Section E. In Section E, let's go. After saying that, he dropped the catalog and ran to Section E of the library. The empty library was filled with only the hurried footsteps of two people. He looked up and saw the numbers on the tall bookshelf and stopped. Sure enough, I knew that this is where I want to be. Looking at the magic books on the bookshelf, such as detailed explanation of shadow touch, partial application of giant transformation and shrinkage, and the true meaning of the soul, Allen's eyes lit up instantly. Bus, hurry up and pack all these books. We must leave before the two sides decide the winner. After scanning several bookshelves, the two began to work. There are more books related to divine magic among the drow elves, and most of the others are about some awakened abilities in their blood. There are not many books about wizards. However, there are still records of some simpler spells. There is no time to read more. At this time, the shouting and killing outside the temple has gradually subsided. It seems that the winner has been decided. However, no matter which side wins, Allen's behavior of picking peaches will never be tolerated. Allen needed to leave before they found him. The collection of the drow elves was not large. There were only 3 bookshelves in this chute. Soon, the two had filled them all. After putting away the dimensional bag, the two turned around and ran to the door. At the moment, when the door was pushed, it was suddenly opened from the outside. 3 figures in black robes faced Allen. When they saw Allen, who was about to rush out, their expressions were obviously stunned. Allen did not expect that these black wizards would come so quickly. Taking advantage of the moment when they were stunned, Allen had already taken action. The cross sword appeared in his hand at some point, and a layer of dragon scales appeared on the surface of his body, and a golden light appeared in his eyes. An evil aura instantly spread from the bodies of the 3 black wizards. It was like passing through an invisible eggshell. Allen immediately entered an area shrouded by a force. This feeling was so familiar. When he fought against high-level demons, he had encountered this kind of evil domain power more than once. Compared with demons, these evil auras were still far behind. Elemental resistance, negative energy protection, distorted force field. Several spells were instantly cast on Allen's body. The cross sword generated huge wind pressure under the huge force, whistling and slashing at the nearest black wizard. The sharp sword was in front of him in an instant. The black wizard, who had no time to think, activated the shadow shield that came with his robe, and the 2 black wizards who were slightly behind followed suit. Shadow Thorn, Psychic Shock. Instead of rescuing the black wizard first, he decided to exchange injuries for injuries. Allen didn't even look at the upcoming spells. The cross sword, with an unstoppable momentum, instantly cut through the shadow shield and continued to slash towards the black wizard's neck. The black wizard didn't expect Allen to ignore it and exchange injuries for injuries. If he didn't resist, he would definitely be beheaded before he released the spell to attack Allen. Without thinking, the black wizard instantly held a bone staff in front of him. Clang! My hand. A splash of dark red blood was seen, and the bone staff was directly broken into 2 sections. Blood splattered, and a severed hand flew out. Just when Allen cut off his arm, 2 spells had already hit his body. Allen felt a sharp pain in his brain, and his eyes went black before he stood firm. A mouthful of blood rushed straight to his throat. He resisted the dizziness and pain, and his footsteps did not stop. He caught up with the armless wizard who was retreating. A breath continued to strengthen, and his muscles bulged. Dark red scales were faintly visible on his skin. If someone came closer to observe at this time, they would find that Allen's chest was covered with hard scales, and the scales continued to spread and extended to his limbs. The evil aura around the black wizard's body had been torn open by Allen, and then rushed in with unstoppable force. The cross sword turned into a beam of light, instantly crossed the middle distance, and sank into his chest. But before Allen could draw his sword, the blood-stained and hideous face of the black wizard was full of madness. Curse of the evil spirit. Following the roar, a dark light instantly hit Allen, followed by a series of black phantoms appearing in front of Allen, and a cold breath instantly spread out. Allen only felt that countless figures suddenly appeared in his mind, rushing towards him madly, and countless whispers sounded in his ears. It made him upset. Shut up. A furious roar exploded instantly. Dragon breath spray. A hot flame with a strong smell of sulfur instantly spewed out of Allen's mouth. The flame burst out with intense high temperature, and the surrounding air was instantly emptied. The seriously injured black wizard in front had no time to dodge and was wrapped in thousands of degrees of high temperature with a look of horror. Shrill screams continued to come from the human-shaped torch. The two black wizards behind him had no time to dodge, and a large amount of flames burned on their bodies. Several black and grey spiritual lights flashed on their bodies one after another, and the dragon's breath flame was quickly extinguished. The evil aura around him had been swept away by the dragon's breath, and all the figures in his mind were cleared out. The black lines on his body were constantly worn away by the spiritual light on Allen's body. In the blink of an eye, only a faint shadow remained. As Allen's power exploded, blood surged wildly in his body, his heartbeat speed was increased several times, and his body temperature rose rapidly. Allen's spine made crackling sounds, and his whole body was raised a lot. Allen, who was originally tall, now seemed to be facing this prehistoric beast. The scales on his body became thick, and a metallic luster appeared faintly. With a loud roar, when he opened his eyes again, his pupils had turned fiery red. This fiery red was still gradually spreading, and it was faintly covering the entire eyeball. Bang! Allen leaped up and rushed forward like a cannonball. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of a black wizard. His shirt was torn, revealing his muscular chest. A large piece of dark red dragon scales covered his chest. His figure had risen to 2 meters, and his muscular arms were extremely powerful. Facing the black light spears thrown by the two black wizards, he did not dodge at all. He waved his palm as big as a palm leaf fan, directly deflecting several spells, and then exploded instantly. His figure did not stop, and rushed directly to the target. The wind pressure instantly dispersed the exploding spell aura, and Allen had rushed to the black wizard less than 1 meter away. Chapter 142 Dark Wizard 2. A sword light like autumn water flashed across, and dark red blood gushed out. Allen cut a deep cut on the black wizard's neck. The black wizard only had time to turn his head, and he felt a chill in his throat, and the blood stained the ground red. You gurgled. A burst of blood reflux made him speechless, but before Allen had time to be happy, the black wizard's eyes were red, and an evil power gushed out of his body. Allen looked a little surprised. The black wizard in front of him had no blood flowing out of his neck after being cut in half. On the contrary, a rotten corpse smell came. The rich and dead energy on his body was even more aggravated at this time, and the black wizard almost turned into an undead creature. The next moment, the strange black mist gathered and turned into a skull with empty eye sockets and instantly pounced into Allen's body. Ghost? It actually connects with my soul. These dark wizards are really suicidal. They are not afraid of polluting their souls by doing this. They will never have a chance to advance again. Oh no, he has no chance after beating me. The invisible and intangible ghost directly penetrated the matter and fell on Allen. A shrill wailing and screaming kept echoing in his mind. However, Allen, who had seen stronger eye demon mental attacks, did not take this difficulty to heart. He felt a tightening in his heart, as if being held by a big hand. His brain was tingling, and he felt a strange coldness all over his body. Psychic attack, mental attack, negative energy erosion, blood control. But this power is like hurting me? Naive. With a roar, the blood in Allen's body became even hotter. A faint dragon shadow appeared in his fiery red pupils. The twisted soul phantom hit Allen, just like putting a piece of iron into sulfuric acid, and it sizzled instantly. The next moment, it let out a shrill scream, and the vengeful spirits dispersed, and turned into wisps of black smoke, and fled back to the wizard's body. Since you are here, don't leave. Allen sneered, and his palm as big as a palm fan grabbed the air, and wisps of black smoke were instantly imprisoned in his palm. How is it possible? The pale black wizard was shocked and muttered, just a first level wizard, how can he resist the soul attack and grab the soul with his hands? A first level wizard, you will know soon. With a slash, a bright sword light flashed, breaking the imprisonment force field cast by another wizard, and his body dodged continuously, avoiding the following several corrosive magic balls. The half-undead wizard took the opportunity to distance himself, stared at Allen in front of him, and whispered, "I haven't met such an interesting person for a long time. I didn't expect to meet such an interesting thing in this drow city. I'm very interested in your dragon vein now." "Really? I'm also interested in your soul," Allen said, raising his left hand, and the vengeful spirit could be seen struggling between his fingers. Seeing the wizard looking over, Allen grinned, then exerted force with his fingers, and the vengeful spirit inside was instantly squeezed and deformed. No. Seeing Allen's actions, the half-undead black wizard instantly knew his plan, but it was too late. Bang! It was as if the sound of a balloon being squeezed and bursting came. Points of spiritual light scattered in the air, and only a soul crystal emitting a faint spiritual light was left in Allen's hand. The black wizard, who was already pale, seemed to have received a heavy blow, and black blood oozed from his eyes and nose. "You, damn it. Negative energy ray." Without bothering to wipe the blood stains, a black ray of light as black as ink with a breath of death shot directly at Allen. Allen, who had been prepared, suddenly had a light flame shield in front of him, just blocking the black ray. His figure flashed and rushed towards the black wizard. Seeing Allen rushing over, the half-undead black wizard knew that, if he couldn't hold on, he would be dead, and a series of spiritual lights flashed continuously. Wizard armor, bone shield, undead steel bones. Allen's figure turned into a residual image, and he flew over a distance of more than 10 meters in an instant. He jumped over several red fireballs lightly and dodged them. No obstacles that were difficult to cross could stop him. He tapped the marble pillars of the library with his toes, and passed through the dense spell interception like a gust of wind. The place where his footsteps landed, could clearly see the marble floor directly shattered by the huge force. Spider web-like cracks appeared on the ground around him. Finally, he approached the retreating black wizard again. Allen resisted several negative energy spells, and swung the cross sword in his hand again. "Goodbye." A flame burst out from his fiery red pupils. The darkness of the underground world could not block his sight. Everything seemed to be stagnant. Allen could clearly see the terrified expression of the black wizard, even every hair on his face. In the eyes of others, his speed increased instantly. The sword light drew a series of residual images in the air, and his figure became blurred. The cross sword was already swung. Allen's figure suddenly rotated and rushed to the enemy, drawing a series of residual light. The overwhelming sword light enveloped the target. Allen slashed more than a dozen swords in this instant. The wizard's armor shattered like an eggshell, and the magic aura scattered everywhere, like fireflies in this dim underground world. Extremely beautiful. The energy shield on the black wizard's body couldn't even hold out for a breath. Fortunately, a bone shield instantly blocked in front of him. Bone fragments flew everywhere, and then with a bang, the bone shield exploded directly. Although it only bought a few seconds, his body had already completed the transformation. Several scars appeared on the surface of his body instantly, but his undead body was abnormally hard. Although the slash left deep marks, no more blood flowed out. In order to fight Allen, he had completely turned himself into an undead. The strengthened body was abnormally hard. Although Allen's attack did not cut off his body, the continuous attacks did not give him a chance to stand firm. The spell of undead transformation Iron Bones is a spell that only some black wizards practice. It can transform the body into an undead and then gain extremely high defense, but the price is to lose all the feelings of being alive and become a cold living dead. With such a large price, the effect is naturally very strong. There will be no pain, no bleeding, no fatal flaws. The body's defense will be greatly increased, and the resistance to various elements will be greatly improved. If you ignore the negative effects and only look at the defense, this spell is comparable to the defense spell of a 3rd level wizard. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Dark Wizard 3. However, once this spell is used, the person will be transformed into an undead, and the transformation cannot be reversed. The only way forward is to advance to a lich. If one wants to transform into a lich, the success rate is basically close to 0. If one is only at the 2nd level wizard level, It's completely undead, but do you have any choice at this time? The undead black wizard was already filled with anger. As a second level wizard, it had been a long time since he had been so embarrassed. He remembered that the last time was hundreds of years ago, when he had just entered the wizard world. He was forced to the end of his rope by a secondary demon beast. This time, he was forced to this point by a combat wizard. When he thought that the future was cut off, he wanted to crush this damn combat wizard to death. However, the power of this combat wizard was too strong. His body, which had already completed the transformation into an undead, was almost unable to resist. The other two subordinates were also useless. One was killed as soon as he met, and the other could not keep up with the pace of the two. You ruined my future. I will kill you, extract your soul, and imprison it in my magic wand. I will torture you day and night until your soul is completely destroyed. A roar came from the wizard's mouth. Do you think you can defeat me with your undead body of steel and iron? Allen curled his lips and narrowed his eyes slightly. Touch of shadow. The familiar dark-colored energy tentacles appeared instantly, and then instantly wrapped around the undead black wizard, as if they had life. The moment they touched the other party, the energy absorption characteristics of the shadow touch appeared. Then the energy tentacles instantly wrapped around his body, constantly absorbing the energy of the black wizard, and at the same time, the corrosiveness carried by the shadow touch began to erode his defense. Soon the energy of the black wizard was visibly decreasing, and the protective energy on the surface of his body had collapsed. The black wizard obviously felt that something was wrong. His body was restricted. With Allen's strong strength, he couldn't hold on for a few times. He had always thought that Allen was a wizard with physical enhancement, but he didn't expect that his spellcasting ability was not inferior at all. The moment he was entangled by the touch of shadow, he didn't even have time to break free. He looked at the staff in his hand with a heartache, and without thinking, he used it decisively. Soul shock. The staff inlaid with a dark crystal instantly shot out a strange energy ray, and after a flash, it instantly hit Allen. The next moment, Allen saw his body. After the staff released this energy, the dark crystal on it instantly shattered and turned into a glittering powder. When the wind blew, it dissipated directly. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Allen saw that his body stopped moving, and another black wizard finally seized the opportunity. Aging. Delayed. Disease. A series of negative effects hit Allen. An invisible negative energy raged in Allen's body, and the aura around him began to weaken, and his body began to wither. Only a flash of spiritual light flashed on Allen's body, and his body, which had already begun to age, stopped aging. The grey spiritual light began to gradually diminish, and a violent spiritual light burst out from Allen's body. The grey hair that had already appeared turned black again, and the breathing rate that had slowed down began to recover. Allen quickly pounced on his body. The soul had entered the body, and Allen felt a sense of weakness. It seems that, although the body was immune to those spells just now, it still has some effects. There was no time to think about it, and the enemy's attack appeared in front of him. Without thinking, Allen fell to the ground directly, and then rolled to avoid it. The cold spell breath brushed Allen's hair and hit the ground behind him. The hard marble was instantly corroded into a big hole. A group of disgusting liquids appeared in the pit and continued to spread around, but it was soon consumed. He stood up in an awkward manner, raised his fingers slightly, and a flash of light flashed. Flame arrow asterisk 3 quote in an instant. 3 fiery red arrows shot out in no particular order, and the scorching flames ignited the surrounding air. The flying spells just hit the black wizard who was not far away. Violent explosions sounded, and the spell shields were broken one after another. Allen had no intention of stopping. Another flash of inspiration appeared. Exploding fireball, and the huge dark red fireball flew directly over. The smoke and dust that had not yet dispersed instantly made another loud noise. A large pit with a diameter of several meters was blown out of the marble floor. At this time, the black wizard who was entangled by the touch of shadow finally broke free from the tentacles. A strange black mist spread from his body, and the white marble floor was soon eroded into pits and turned black. Then shadow balls flew over one by one. But these spells had no effect at all. A barrier rose in front of Allen. Although it was constantly flickering after being hit, it still did not break. Although he got rid of the touch of shadow, his breath was obviously much weaker, and the speed of casting spells began to slow down. The blessing of the red dragon bloodline made Allen reach instant casting when casting low-level fire element spells. At this time, he was not at a disadvantage in fighting with this second level wizard. Blade of Flame. A huge arc of flame was released by Allen. The violent elemental fluctuations instantly dispelled the negative energy around, and a hot breath rose. Then the huge flame blade shot out, and the places it passed were instantly roasted and cracked, and then caught up with the black wizard, who wanted to escape when he saw that the situation was not good. This time, the black wizard, who had no spell protection effect on his body, finally couldn't resist. The evil aura around his body was instantly torn apart, and then a flash of fire passed. With a miserable wail, the undead body of the black wizard was cut in half. The intense and higher temperature of the blade of flame directly ignited his body, and then it collided with the aura on his body continuously, and finally extinguished. Allen dispersed the scales on his body, and his body under pressure began to return to its original state. He took out a wizard robe, and threw away the clothes on his body that had been rotten into pieces of cloth. The negative energy around was slowly fading, but the violent elemental fluctuations would continue for a while. Allen began to clean up the battlefield. This time, he spent so much effort to kill 3 dark wizards. The trump card used by the second level dark wizard almost made Allen fall into the gutter. He held the staff with a look of pity, only to see that the runes on it had collapsed. The inlaid dark crystals had turned into powder, and the main body of the ghostwood had begun to decay. This magic item was no longer worth repairing. When Allen thought about the damage of this thing, that might be worth hundreds of dollars, he felt a pain in his liver. Chapter 144, Digging Worms. 1. After checking, the body was not completely damaged. Allen wanted to know the degree of demonization of the black wizard's body structure. This black wizard is quite rich. Picking up the dimensional bags of the other 2 black wizards, his eyes suddenly lit up. The 2 black wizards had 1 or 200 magic stones on their bodies, but more were body parts of various monsters, which looked bloody and evil. Allen collected them all, and prepared to check them carefully after returning. Allen looked around. There was chaos around. There were many black wizards coming this time. The drow elves were still resisting sporadically. The city was in chaos. No black wizard had noticed this place yet. In the melee just now, Biss knew the power of the wizards, and hid in the library at the first time. She had no right to intervene in this level of battle. As soon as one foot stepped into the library, the light was a little dim. Allen felt a little cold light expanding in front of his eyes. Stun. The finger flicked a little and a flash of light instantly disappeared into a slender black shadow. The figure who rushed over staggered and fell into Allen's arms. With his arms extended, he caught the figure. Allen had already found that it was his little maid. The place where his fingers touched was soft and elastic. Allen subconsciously pinched it. Instantly, he felt a strange look. He pretended that nothing had happened and said with his head down, "Okay, we are making too much noise. If we don't leave now, we really can't leave. There are more than a few black wizards in the city. Did you solve them all?" Looking at Biss, who was surprised, Allen rubbed her pointed ears with his hands. Solved. He turned and left with the little maid. Night fell in the dark area. Allen and Biss flew quickly in the same flying posture as last time. Some strange lights suddenly appeared in the huge cave in front. Allen took a closer look and found that it was a kind of fluorescent mushroom growing underground. Various mushrooms exuded a faint aura. Countless fireflies were flying in the air. At this moment, they were flying towards their direction. As they approached, the whole cave was dyed with a faint blue color, and the breeze blew and fluttered in the wind. The faint blue light illuminated the entire cave, making the space gorgeous and dreamy. Everything seemed like a fairy tale dream, and it looked very beautiful and spectacular. "It's so beautiful." Biss looked at the gorgeous scenery with an intoxicated face. Then she ran over like a child. The numerous light spots seemed to have spirits and actually spun around her body. She stretched out her finger and caught a light spot. The light spot emitted a faint light on her finger. It was a nearly transparent thing with only a little light in the center. "Chip. Scan it." "What is this?" Ding. The task is established and the scan is started. The scan is completed. The object is the spore of a fungus plant. Is this the spore of a fluorescent mushroom? There are so many. Looking at the light spots flying all over the sky, Allen was also shocked by the scene. Fluorescent mushrooms are an important light source in the underground world, and also the food of most herbivorous animals. Even the cave people grow them in large quantities as food. This is the first time Allen has seen such a large-scale reproduction of fluorescent mushrooms. It is also because of fluorescent mushrooms that the underground world can be so prosperous. Stop playing. We should hurry on our way. Allen glanced at Bess, who was playing in the fluorescent spores, and said, "Oh." Hearing his words, the little maid walked back disappointed. Allen had not studied the little maid's drow blood. He had met a witch with drow blood in the station, but Catherine's attitude towards Allen made it impossible to give her an injection and draw blood. Fortunately, there was a pure-blooded one here. Although her strength was only a weak chicken with a combat power of 5, it would not be difficult to train her to advance to a first-level wizard with her blood. The physical fitness of a first-level wizard is much better than her current physical fitness, and more durable. There are still 2 days before the end of the mission today. Allen did not plan to go back yet. He planned to continue wandering outside to see if he could encounter anything valuable. The underground world is composed of countless natural caves, which are interconnected like a maze. It is easy for those who are not familiar with the road to get lost. Allen also relied on the scanning function of the chip to have a more intuitive map. At the same time, the chip has marked the caves here so that he will not get lost. After going forward for more than 10 kilometers, the chip reminded Allen. Ding. 2.3 kilometers ahead, man-made building ruins were found. Allen's eyes lit up when he heard it, and he waved his hand to signal, "Come on, there are new discoveries." After going forward for another 2 kilometers, a collapsed man-made building appeared not far away. "Let's go." The ruins were getting closer and closer. This ruins was not big, covering only about 300 square meters. It should be a detection base for ancient wizards. Seeing that it was not a large ruins, Allen was a little disappointed. However, Allen, who was very lucky, was only slightly disappointed. What else do you need a bicycle when there are ruins? Alarm. Scanning demonized creature fluctuations. The target is very hostile. As soon as he approached the ruins, Allen heard the warning of the chip. At this time, Allen also sensed the breath of several monsters approaching. Something is coming. Be careful. Allen said to Bess in a deep voice. Be careful to protect yourself. The enemy sneaked into the ground. The slight vibration of the ground was transmitted to Allen. The perception of these monsters was amazing. Before Allen found them, they discovered Allen one step ahead. At this time, Allen had already entered their territory. This group of monsters regarded the ruins as their own nest. Chip. Scan the status of vital signs. The perception of wizards is not very good. At least there are many people in this world who have stronger perception than wizards. Allen's perception has been greatly improved after the training in Uganda, but at this time he can only roughly feel the movements of these monsters. In the chip scan, several huge objects appeared on Allen's retina. I'm so lucky to encounter a digging worm. Allen was delighted when he saw the monster displayed by the chip. Although the digging worm is not weak, it doesn't take Allen to heart. What really makes him happy is the value of the digging worm. This is a multi-legged arthropod with a body composed of many segments. It is about 1.5 meters wide and can reach 10 meters in length. It has a tremor perception and can detect anyone walking on the ground. The burrowing worm has a pair of huge jaws that can easily bite off trees and tear prey into pieces. There is also strong acid in its body that can cause corrosive damage to the enemy. It has 8 to 16 slender legs with sharp claws. Have you ever played Baldur's Gate? The burrowing worm is a very good monster. Chapter 145, Digging Worms. 2. When attacking, the burrowing worm can spit strong acid at its prey. This strong acid attack is much more powerful than the wizard's secondary spell Acid Splash. Ordinary metal armor has no resistance to this. Even a ninth level burrowing worm will have serious consequences after being sprayed. The whole person may die directly. Burrowing worms belong to insects. Insects have a very obvious characteristic, that is, they live in groups. Therefore, burrowing worms usually move in a small group of 2 to 5. They are scavengers, but if there is fresh meat, they will not refuse. This creature rarely attacks actively except for hunting, but there is another situation in which they will attack actively, that is, entering their nest range. There are not many burrowing worms in the underground world because they do not like hard ground. There are more rocks in the dark area, so there are not many burrowing worms. However, in some caves with lush vegetation, there are thick humus layers, and there are more burrowing worms. For other professions, digging worms are very dangerous, but for wizards, as long as they are found, the result is already determined. Digging worms can only rely on vibrations to sense people or animals on the ground, but wizards can fly. Therefore, no matter how strong the digging worm's perception ability is, it cannot sense wizards, unless the wizard does not find it, and is attacked by it on the ground. Otherwise, no matter how many come, they are just food. Wizards like digging worms. A big factor in this liking is that they are very valuable. First of all, the shell of the digging worm is a very good thing. It is light and hard. Compared with some heavy armor, its defense is not inferior at all. At the same time, runes can be engraved on it to further enhance the strength of the armor. It has a high immunity to strong acid. Armor made of digging worm shells, with the enchantment of a skilled wizard, is definitely a high-end product and worth a lot of money. There is a sac in the body of the digging worm that stores a lot of acid. Using this acid as a spell material to cast acid splash power will definitely satisfy you, but this method is relatively low end. The alchemy tower is purchasing these acids at a high price. Many metal and all chemical experiments use acid. It can remove impurities in some rare metals very well, and can also neutralize side effects in some monster potions. It is very valuable. Flying spell. Wizard's hand. With a flick of his finger, the two of them flew into the air. Allen manipulated the wizard's hand to move back and forth on the ground, making noises and luring the digging worms to attack. Hiss. Suddenly, there was a strange sound from the ground. The wizard's hand controlled by Allen was moving there. He suddenly found that a large piece of rotten leaves on the ground bulged up, and then a huge insect with a hideous face drilled out from the ground and opened its huge mouth directly to bite Alu's wizard's hand. But the result was doomed. The sharp teeth bit, but there was no prey as imagined. Clang, the sound of teeth biting together. Allen was a little worried that its teeth would break. Monster immobilization spell. Just when the burrowing worm felt a little confused because it had not bitten the object, a spell aura flew out instantly, and the burrowing worm suddenly stiffened and fixed in place, and the runes formed by the spell aura locked it tightly. Allen pulled out the cross sword and wiped it casually. With a silver white glow, the weapon had been blessed with a high-level magic weapon, and then pierced into the monster's body along the edge of the burrowing worm shell. Then it circled around, and the huge head of the burrowing worm was directly cut off. The shell is a good thing, and its value will be greatly reduced if it is damaged. The dirty blood spread, and Allen did not land. The chip showed that there were still 2 more burrowing worms that had not come out. Next, Allen used the same method to easily kill the remaining 2 burrowing worms. The surrounding air was filled with a foul smell. The blood of the burrowing worm was also slightly acidic, and the dark green blood flowed all over the ground. Next is the time to harvest. Every time at this time, Allen is in the happiest mood. But watch my technique and slowly peel off these insect shells. Be careful of its blood. Wear these gloves. Your body resistant cannot withstand this acid. Allen took out a pair of special leather gloves and handed them to the little maid, then instructed her to start working. The most valuable part of the digging worm is the carapace on its head. This is the hardest part of its body. The other carapaces are much weaker. See its jaws? Take them off too. Be careful not to damage them. The two quickly peeled off the carapace of the digging worm. The next thing is the capsule inside its body. Allen can only do this by himself. The little maid's skills can easily break the capsule. After the capsule is broken, the acid inside will come into contact with the air, and the value will be greatly reduced. This is what Allen does not allow. In fact, blood is also useful. As a spellcasting material, wizard apprentices like it very much. However, Allen did not look at the blood he extracted. It was inconvenient to carry, and the value was not high. He just extracted a few liters and packed them up to study after returning. Soon, the valuable parts of the 3 diggers were taken away by Allen, and what was left was a pile of rotten meat. These did not need to be cleaned up. The numerous scavengers in the underground world would clean them up. By the next day, there would be nothing here except a little blood. The two continued to move forward to the ruins. Allen had no hope for this ruins. After being used as a nest by the diggers, there were very few valuable things that could survive. Soon, the two entered the ruins. The ruins were also built with obsidian. The style was similar to the ones found before. There were broken walls and ruins everywhere. Some pipes and equipment made of magic steel had been destroyed. They were originally rotten things. After being stained by acid, they turned into powder with a light touch. This is a ground vein node. The concentration of element around it is obviously higher than other areas. The diggers are attracted by these element concentrations. After checking the surroundings and finding nothing valuable, Allen had a flash of inspiration in his hand. Wind spell. The surrounding pebbles, corroded magic steel powder, and the smell left by the diggers were directly cleaned out. We'll spend the night here. Looking at the magic clock, it was already late at night. Allen was going to rest here. As the nest of the digging worms, no other creatures would dare to come here. The bonfire was lit, and some digging worm meat was cut. Water element bowl. The blood and meat were cleaned in the water element, and then a barbecue grill was set up. The rest was naturally left to the little maid. As a wizard master, how could he do such a thing? Allen would never admit that he only knew how to make mushroom soup. Chapter 146 Dragon Shadow. The next day, the magic clock woke Allen on time, and the two had a casual breakfast. At this time, 3 days had passed since they came out. The underground secret realm was too big, with similar caves everywhere, one cave connected to another, and there was not even a signpost. Allen could only wander around and try his luck. As for other people, it was even more difficult to search. Formulating coordinates and maps is a must for exploring the secret realm next. However, according to Allen's estimation, such a vast underground secret realm, even if the Five Rings Tower and other wizard organizations join forces, it will take at least 3 to 5 years to formulate maps and coordinates. Let's go back today. We have gained a lot. Allen gave up wandering around. Let's wait until the map is out. According to the chip scan, it is estimated that this place is already millions of square kilometers in size. It exceeds the size of dozens of kingdoms on the ground combined. It is not realistic to explore it in a short time. Take out the materials and build a simple teleportation array, and a spell aura emerges. Allen and Biss have disappeared on the spot, and when they open their eyes, they have appeared in a cave. Under his feet was the temporary teleportation array that Allen had built, but it was completely damaged after being used. The cave was still sealed and no one had moved. He manipulated the earth element to open the cave. It was very close to the base of the Five Rings Tower. Allen led Biss to the base. When he arrived, the other wizards had already arrived. The witch Catherine stationed at the base had been transferred, and a combat wizard with a shaved head and tattoos took over. "Is this your man?" The combat wizard stared at Allen's little maid and said. As soon as the little maid arrived here, she felt that she was facing a group of monsters. Each of them had a strong breath and kept sticking to Allen. When she heard the question about herself, she shrank behind Allen, as if people around her would not see her. "Yes, sir." Allen nodded, and then comforted the little maid hiding behind him. "I will pay 50 magic stones. How about transferring it to me?" Seeing Allen's admission, the combat wizard said with a smile on his face. Hearing this, the maid suddenly tightened her grip on Allen's arm. Allen looked back at the nervous maid and smiled. "Of course. Not for sale," Allen suddenly said, when he saw the maid showing a desperate expression. "Well, it's just a drow elf. 50 magic stones are not low." The battle wizard frowned and looked at Allen in surprise. "I'm very sorry. Although 50 magic stones are not low, she has other uses for me, so I won't sell it." Allen shook his head and said, "Well, since you have a special use for her, forget it." The bald wizard glanced back and forth between Allen and the maid with a strange look, and then he looked, as if he had suddenly realized something, and showed Allen a look that all men understand, and then blinked and left. Allen looked at the bald wizard, who left in confusion, feeling a little puzzled, but since there was no problem, he didn't take it to heart. "Have you heard? Someone has found the trace of the frost pterosaur." When Allen was about to enter the house, an academic wizard said mysteriously, "Frost pterosaur? That's a good thing," Allen said with interest. He secretly went to the black wizard's territory and came back. Not to mention the frost pterosaur, he didn't even encounter anything with the word dragon. It seems that there are still many good things in this secret realm. Frost pterosaur, it is said to be the subspecies closest to the dragon. Allen recalled and murmured, the bloodline of the frost pterosaur is close to the white dragon among the 5-colored dragons. Is there a white dragon living in the secret realm? Suddenly, his eyes lit up. The white dragon is called the shame of the dragon. The strength of the adult white dragon is only the 3rd level according to the wizard century. Only when it reaches the ancient dragon stage can it touch the legendary level. The white dragon in the ancient dragon period can truly become a legendary dragon. However, considering that this secret realm has been closed for so long, if the dragon has been surviving here, it is very likely that this white dragon is now an ancient dragon, or even a great ancient dragon. The dragons of this period are not something that the current 5-ring tower can afford to provoke. After a brief thought, Allen gave up the idea of going with him. This giant dragon only needs to move its fingers to kill as many wizards as possible. Adult frost pterosaurs are 2nd level wizards. They have no forelimbs, only 2 huge flesh wings, and their body surface is covered with tiny scales. They have relatively low defense. They have strong hind limbs, wings that can be folded up, and the ability to breathe ice. Frost pterosaurs are small social animals that usually live by the water. Their main food is fish. Frost pterosaurs like to dive from high places to hunt. They weigh about 2 tons. The length is more than 7 meters, and the wingspan is up to 10 meters. The strong wing flapping force can directly flatten the knight's full body armor. The ability to breathe ice is equivalent to the instantaneous 2nd level witchcraft. If you are hit, you will directly turn into an ice sculpture, and then when the wings are swept, it will turn into a pile of ice. The academy did not recruit 1st level wizards, and Allen's idea of seeing the frost pterosaurs was dashed. Allen's purpose of this trip was almost achieved. On the 7th day of the mission, he brought back the group of gold-eating beasts and sold most of them to the academy. Allen kept a part for himself and then handed in the scanned parchment scroll. His mission was completed. In the next 3 days, Allen wandered around the base, but apart from a large number of demonized beasts, he did not find anything else. In the past few days, the little maid finally became much more honest. There were so many wizards around, which scared her. She kept following Allen, and the wizards looked at Allen with even more strange eyes. On the 10th day, all the 1st level wizards completed their tasks. Allen decided to return to the academy to collect their rewards, while the other wizards were ready to stay here and continue fighting. After all, the income here is much higher than that of the academy. Most of the fighting wizards chose to stay. Only 1 female wizard from the academy stayed, and the others were ready to return to the academy. The 5 Rings Tower is the largest base in the underground world. This is a branch that was completed in the last few days. The teleportation array has been directly connected to the academy. The entire base is wrapped in a translucent energy barrier. Small wizard towers more than 10 meters high have even been built around it. A large number of constructed golems are patrolling back and forth. If they find no credentials, they will attack immediately. Behind the middle hall is a 30-meter high wizard tower, which is the center of the entire base and controls many constructed golems. After the handover in the mission hall, Allen and others received their rewards and then stood on the teleportation array. This time, they no longer need to go through the long passage of the underground corridor to the surface and leave on the teleportation array. You can go back to the academy directly here. After a dizzy spell, Allen has returned to the 5 Rings Tower. Seeing the sun again, Allen felt as if he was in another world, and the little maid who saw the sun for the first time was even more shocked. She stared at the sun, but after a few seconds, she regretted it. The drow elves who had never experienced strong light felt a stinging pain in their eyes, and their snot and tears flowed down. Chapter 147, Magic of the Drow. 1. Allen took out a piece of black magic crystal and a piece of metal, snapped his right fingers, and a cluster of elemental flames ignited instantly. Controlling the wizard's hand, he melted the black magic crystal into 2 lenses, then melted the metal to make a glasses frame, put the black crystal pieces in it, and a pair of very magical sunglasses was completed. Then the drow elf maid was upgraded to a glasses girl. After looking at the effect, Allen nodded with satisfaction. Ecological Park. When Allen came back, he met Lilith. Lilith's natural breath was more intense, but since she merged with the blood of the natural fairy, Lilith also began to like pranks. Alan's house is still 3 big mushrooms. Alan, are you back from the underground secret realm? Seeing Alan, Lilith's eyes lit up and walked over with a smile on her face. The flower fairy Shire grabbed a strand of Lilith's hair and looked at Alan. She found that she knew him and then flew out from behind Lilith's neck. She greeted Alan shyly. Hello, Lilith. It's been a long time since we last met, Shire. Alan waved and said hello. Lilith then discovered the little maid hiding behind Alan. She turned around her in surprise. Seeing this, who was a head taller than her, she snorted and then looked at her chest. Although the little maid had big breasts, they were still smaller than Lilith's. At this time, Lilith raised her pointed chin proudly, straightened her chest, hummed, and said, "Who are you?" "Master Wizard, I'm the Master's maid." The somewhat flustered little maid said. "Maid." Hearing that she was a maid, Lilith lost interest all of a sudden. "Alan, I didn't expect you to find a drow elf as a maid." She frowned and rolled her eyes at Alan. Drow elves have a long lifespan and have spell-like abilities. I checked and her blood is still very rich, much more useful than human maids. Alan looked at Lilith and rubbed his chin and said, "By the way." Alan patted his head and said, "I also brought you a gift." Then he took out a magic gem from the dimensional bag. A strong magical aura spread from the gem in Alan's hand. Wow. What a big gem. "Shire, this emerald is yours." Shire saw that the emerald was in a dilemma, wanting it but not daring to get close to it. Finally, she couldn't resist the temptation and flew over to pick up the emerald as big as her body. Then she hummed a tune that others couldn't understand and flew to Lilith's shoulder. "Thank you, Alan." The flower fairy raised the gem in her hand happily and said. When he looked up, he saw Lilith staring at him. Alan smiled slightly and took out a diamond the size of an egg. "Lilith, this is yours." Seeing that Alan had not forgotten her, Lilith's eyes curved into crescents, and then she pretended to be nonchalant and said, "Since you are so sincere, I will accept it with reluctance." After saying that, she grabbed the big diamond that was shining with bright light, and her eyes were full of stars, and she showed a silly smile from time to time. Sure enough, women and dragons like these shiny things. A glance saw that Shire on Lilith's shoulder was also like this, and she muttered silently in her heart. "Well, whether it is big or small, it's the same. It's natural. Hey, wipe it. Your saliva is flowing out." Alan's teasing voice woke up Lilith, who was in fantasy. Lilith reacted and quickly put away the big diamond and wiped the corner of her mouth by the way. When she found that there was no saliva, she realized that she was fooled. She glared at Alan fiercely, snorted and turned away. Alan smiled at Lilith, who was leaving, and turned around to see the maid staring at him, her eyes unblinking, as if she would cry if he didn't give it to her. He gave her a ruby, and then she retracted her gaze, and Alan turned around and took the maid back. In the mushroom house, Alan packed his luggage. The room was very clean, with a faint fragrance, which was the fragrance of the house. It had not been lived in for more than 10 days, and there was no dust at all. It looked like someone had cleaned it. There was no doubt that it was Lilith who cleaned it. After arranging the curious little maid to the guest room on the 2nd floor, Alan lay comfortably on his big bed. Comfortable. He stretched and squeezed into the velvet quilt. The next day, Alan, after breakfast, lay on the lounge chair on the balcony and took out the books he brought back from the underground secret realm to read. Most of the harvest this time was resources, but Alan did not plan to use them now. He planned to build a wizard tower of his own outside. In the academy, the land belonged to the academy. The construction of the wizard tower required the consent of the academy, and the academy would help build it and provide many materials. However, the wizard tower also had great authority to make wishes, which was unacceptable to Alan, so he planned to build his own wizard tower outside. The magic materials brought from the underground world were enough to build a wizard tower. The rest were some steel and stone, which could be bought in the city with just some gold coins. A large number of workers also needed to be hired in the city. The construction of a wizard tower would take several years or even more than 10 years of continuous construction and improvement. However, before that, Alan planned to take a break and look through the collection of books of the drow elves. Alan found that the divine arts and spells in it had many similarities, but there were also many differences. The priests did not need to learn the template of the divine book. The divine arts they released were given by the gods, and they consumed not magic power, but the divine power given by the gods. Moreover, many divine arts have incredible effects, and are much stronger than magic spells in treatment. For example, wizards have very few healing spells, and the effect is not as good as divine arts. After reading a few books, Allen finally had a better understanding of divine arts. However, although he knew the template of divine arts, no matter how Allen tried, he could not perform even the lowest level one. After putting away the divine arts books, Allen took out other books and looked at the cover. On the special use of transfiguration, the application of local enlargement and local reduction is a book about transformation. There are very few books about transformation in the Five Rings Tower, only one giant transformation and one reduction, and other books like malicious transformation, which can turn the enemy into a sheep or other animals, unable to attack, but the defense will not change, are not available. However, Allen got a lot of books on the School of Transformation into this, and this book can just verify each other. Chapter 148, Magic of the Drow, 2. Hey. This spell template is a bit strange. After this deletion, although the release requirements are lowered, it can only be cast on a very small part. Allen was a little surprised when flipping through on the special use of transfiguration, the application of local enlargement and local reduction. If this spell is modified according to the spell template in this book, although the consumption and level are much lower, even wizard apprentices can easily cast it. But what's the use of it? It may not be successful, even if it is cast on the arm. Also, what the hell is local reduction? Why does this book feel weird? Allen flipped through the back part. Reduction is the same as giantization, and it is also simplified a lot. The effect can reduce height by 1/3, only reduce height. Hey, this spell has been renamed Lalita spell. Why is it called this name? I flipped to the next page casually, and there were some annotations made by some people on it. The combination of Lalita spell and local enlargement spell gives a better experience, and can be used with a blessing of Greece. Are you sure you can win with this usage? Allen looked at the book with doubt, and his evaluation of the Drow Elf spells was greatly reduced. Sheep transformation spell. This spell is good, but what does the note at the back mean? Goat trail. What does this spell have to do with goat trail? Could it be that these notes are the code words of the Drow Elves, and only by deciphering these code words can we know their true usage? Allen looked at the magic book in his hand and thought with some doubt. Oh, right. This is the daughter of the Drow Elves' great mistress. She must know. So just ask her and we'll know. He did it right away, and a spell flashed with a flick of his finger. Allen muttered a few words, and then flicked his finger, and the spell disappeared. After a while, Bridget, who was wearing a maid outfit, knocked on the door and walked in. Master, what can I do for you? The little maid now knows how powerful the wizard is, and the only person she can rely on now is this wizard master. But, you've lived here for a few days, is there anything you're not used to? Allen felt it necessary to understand the little maid's thoughts. Fortunately, the environment here is much better than the underground world, and I live very well. That's good, because you are not an apprentice of the Five Rings Tower. The wizard knowledge of the Five Rings Tower cannot be taught to you, but I have a lot of wizard inheritances from other places here, which can be passed on to you. And by the way, the things about wizards among you Drow Elves will also be passed on to you. By the way, there are many code words marked in these books. Do you know what they mean? Allen raised the magic book in his hand and asked. Code words? What code words? Can I see? Biss looked at Allen in confusion. Hey, here, and here. What do these mean? Why do they feel a little weird? Allen casually pointed to some marked places for Biss to see, and then stared at Biss's expression. Biss saw the place where Allen pointed, looked at it for a few times, and suddenly understood it. His brown face actually turned red, and then he glared at Allen unhappily, turned around and prepared to leave. Hey, what are you doing? Seeing Biss turning around and preparing to leave, Allen grabbed her and said, what's that expression on your face? It's just some code words about the application of spells. Tell me, I'll teach you, after I learn them. Let go, there are no code words for these spells. Biss said angrily as she pulled Allen's hand away. How can there be no code words? I can cast these spells, but what can I do if I cast them according to the methods above? There must be code words. Since you know them, tell me." Allen didn't give up so easily and asked relentlessly. Biss rubbed his head in distress. "There is a book about sacrificial rituals in the book you took, right? Take it out and have a look. The answer is in there." After saying that, he didn't give Allen another chance to ask again, and he flashed out of the study. Although Allen didn't get the final answer, Biss had already said the information book, and the answer must be in the book, so everything would be easy. Just find it and have a look. As a man of action, Allen was resolute and swift. He took out the book he got from the underground secret realm and started to search. He soon found a book with a pink cover. The title of the book was Detailed Explanation of Sacrificial Rituals. Allen picked up the book and began to check it. It recorded the rituals and methods of pleasing the Spider Queen Rose. Conspiracy and betrayal were the simplest ways to please. Pain and torture were also a way. There were also some bloody sacrificial rituals, which were used to please the gods and obtain divine arts. No secret words were found. Could it be that she was deliberately lying to me? It's impossible. With the contract, she couldn't lie to me. Or is there a secret behind it? Allen, who had read half of the book and found nothing, scratched his head and turned directly to the back. Hey, this is another sacrificial ritual, a way to please Rose. Allen found another sacrificial ritual at the back and continued to read. After looking at it for a few times, Allen dropped the book in his hand to the ground with an extremely strange expression on his face. The drow spells are used in this way. Is it because I'm holding the book in the wrong way? How can there be such a frivolous and vulgar way of using it? It's really great. The 36 soul-stirring fingering techniques of the wizard's hand has been continuously revised and improved for thousands of years. Every style is an ultimate enjoyment. Allen picked up the 36 soul-stirring fingering techniques of the wizard's hand and sighed. The wonderful ideas on it really opened his eyes, and he felt like he had suddenly realized something. The energy transformation of shadow tentacles. With so many categories, the drow have developed this spell to the extreme, with particles on the tentacles and secondary electrostatic force fields. The art of tentacles. What kind of book is this? This is actually a book specializing in tentacle spells. Each level actually has a corresponding tentacle spell. You can learn more than a dozen tentacle spells with this book. The author of this book is definitely a spell master, and his understanding of spells is already at the master level. Allen couldn't help but admire it while flipping through the book The Art of Tentacles. According to the book, a legendary wizard who did not want to reveal his name created this spell and named it Shadow Black Tentacles. Legend has it that this specialized wizard can manipulate them to do all kinds of incredible actions. The spells in this book are all evolved from this spell. Well, this is a great and innovative wizard. Oh, and there is also this book Soul Wandering, Spirit and Flesh. Oh my god. Look what I found. Soul Wandering is a life and death friendship. These drow elves are really good at playing. The book 28 Grease Formulas for Grease is a masterpiece. Allen put down the book with a look of amazement. This book records dozens of uses of grease, and each has a corresponding grease formula. Allen simply looked at one of the formulas called rose oil, which has more than 30 raw materials. The ideas in it opened Allen's eyes and gave him new ideas for the application of spells. Chapter 149 Taylor. After studying magic all night last night, Allen still looked energetic the next day. As soon as he walked out of the mushroom house, he saw Lilith coming here. Allen. Good morning. Lilith greeted him from a distance, and at the same time, brushed her long hair that was blown down, and said happily, "Have you had breakfast? I made some delicious food. Do you want to eat it?" Although he was asking, Allen knew that Lilith must have let him eat the magic food she made when he ran over so early in the morning. It was not the first time that Lilith, who suddenly became fascinated with magic food during this period, did so. Morning. I haven't eaten yet. Allen nodded wisely in response. I knew you haven't eaten yet. This is what I prepared for you. Hearing that Allen did not refuse, Lilith raised the small bamboo basket in her hand and said proudly. Allen took the Bohemia honey cake, took a bite, and gave a thumbs up and said, "It tastes good." Then he ate it with a big mouthful of enjoyment. Shah, hiding in Lilith's hair, watched Allen eat sweetly with a puzzled expression. As Lilith's contract partner, she had been used as an experimental subject by Lilith during this period and had tasted various dishes. She had been baptized by strange tastes more than once, and now she would not touch Lilith's works at all. This time, seeing Allen eating so intoxicated and enjoying it, she was also a little eager in her heart. After all, flower fairies are a race that likes food. Finally, Shah, who could not bear it anymore, circled in the sky and then landed on the bamboo basket in front of Allen. Allen. Good morning. Hello. Shia. Do you want to try it? Seeing Shia coming over, Allen greeted her. Is it really delicious? Shia said hesitantly. Of course, it tastes good. You should try it too. Allen stretched out his hand and made an invitation. Finally, Shia took a piece of Bohemia honey bread from the basket, put her little head close to it, and took a big bite, but the moment after biting it, her delicate little face instantly twisted into a ball. PFFT. Too greasy. Oh, it's so sweet. Oh, Allen, you lied to me. Shia kept spitting out the bread in her mouth, while accusing Allen with a sad and angry face. Looking at the disgusted expression of the flower fairy, Allen laughed. Lilith, who was standing aside, looked embarrassed. Sorry, Allen, I failed again this time. Lilith, I think you should learn cooking and then take the magic cooking course. Allen shook his head and said. Although Lilith's magic cooking looked very tempting, and various magic ingredients also worked, the taste was strange. Sometimes it was delicious, but more often, Allen had already blocked his taste buds before eating. Good morning, everyone. I made some breakfast. Do you want to eat it? Allen's little maid came out with a tray at this time. Bus, give me one. Allen was not going to continue eating the breakfast brought by Lilith. Although he could block his taste buds, it felt like chewing wax. He wanted to enjoy the food. I want one too. Give me one too. The other two beauties also spoke up. Everyone was very satisfied with Bus's cooking skills. They didn't expect that this little maid who was saved in the underground world would have cooking skills that were almost as good as Alfrin, the halfling. After breakfast, Allen lay down on the hammock. Having just returned from the underground world, Allen was ready to take a rest. At the same time, he got a lot of materials this time. He was going to update his equipment. As an outstanding wizard, he only had one magic item, the real mask given by Banda. The other secondary magic items had long been retired because they couldn't keep up with his pace. This time he was going to make a few for his own use. Lilith, do you have tailoring skills? Allen asked while swinging on the hammock. Tailor, yes, I'm a master tailor. My clothes and Shia's clothes are all made by myself. How beautiful. Speaking of tailoring, Lilith's frustration of failing to make magic food just now was swept away, and the whole person became high-spirited. As she spoke, she stood up and turned around. Allen looked at her clothes carefully. The workmanship was indeed very good, then took out a piece of cloth from the dimensional bag and handed it to her. How about this? Lilith took it and took a look, then said with surprise, this cloth is so light. It's smooth, soft and tough. Then he looked at the material again. Allen, where did this cloth come from? This is the first time I've seen it. This is a collection of the Drow elves, spider silk cloth. Allen said casually, his body swaying gently on the hammock. This is spider silk cloth. It is said that this kind of cloth cannot be pierced by ordinary swords. Is it true? Lilith looked at the cloth in her hand with surprise. Ordinary swords can resist, but this is not the point. You should know another feature of this cloth. You mean the magic conductivity. This kind of cloth has a high magic conductivity. As he said that, a ball of magic light lit up in his hand, and then directly injected into the cloth. The cloth exuded a faint aura, and then the aura in his hand disappeared, and the cloth returned to its original state. I want to make a wizard robe, and want you to help me cut it out. Allen stated his purpose directly. Of course, in return, you can also use this fabric to cut one for yourself. Really? Hearing Allen's words, Lilith's eyes lit up instantly, and she looked at Allen without blinking. Of course it's true. Allen nodded affirmatively. Wow, thank you, Allen. I will definitely help you cut it out. By the way, what size and shape of wizard robe do you need? Lilith stroked the spider silk cloth with a happy face. This is a cutting drawing. I need you to cut the wizard robe according to the requirements above. How long will it take you? I need to prepare the enchantment in advance. The design drawing was designed by Chip, based on Allen's sketch, taking Allen's situation into full consideration. The wizard robe design drawing that had been prepared long ago was handed to Lilith. Allen's level of cutting clothes was not even good enough to sew a pair of pants. The best way was to find someone familiar to help. Unexpectedly, the seemingly unreliable Lilith was actually a master tailor. Who knows how she became such a patient master tailor? Well, let me take a look. It's a bit complicated and may take a little longer. If everything goes well, it will take a week and no more than 10 days at most. Lilith looked through the design drawings and nodded. Allen had high requirements for this wizard robe. After all, it was something to be worn outside. It would be a loss of face if the style was ugly or the workmanship was crude. Chapter 150 Spider Silk Robe. The cutting of wizard robes is a bit troublesome because spider silk cloth is a kind of high-level enchanted cloth, which is very precious, and the loss of cutting should be reduced as much as possible. This is very demanding for tailors. Now that we have Lilith, the next problem is enchantment. 50% of the final quality of a wizard robe depends on the final enchantment effect. If the enchantment effect is not good, no matter how good the material of the wizard robe is, it is just a vase. A top-level wizard robe is extremely precious. Among all the magic items, the wizard robe can be said to be the most important magic item. First of all, the area of the wizard robe is very large, and the place where it can be engraved with runes is the most in the equipment, but this does not mean that it can be wasted at will. Secondly, the wizard robe is also the last line of defense to protect itself. As long as you wear the wizard robe, you can activate the defensive spells on your body at any time, which is very important for all wizards. When a wizard releases a spell, the wizard robe should also increase the help to reduce the consumption and difficulty of casting. The wizard robe is a very important trump card for a wizard. Few wizards will use others to complete the final enchantment, which is equivalent to telling others one of their trump cards. Allen had already prepared a plan for which enchantments to choose. Under the simulation of the chip, Allen had simulated thousands of times to ensure that there would be no mistakes. Time passed quickly. In the next half-month, Allen put his energy into work. After Lilith sent the cut wizard robe to him, he was making his own exclusive wizard robe. In the laboratory, Allen was controlling the wizard's hand, engraving the golden silk thread on the inner layer of the wizard robe bit by bit. In order to fully exert the effect of the wizard robe, Allen had spent half a month. During this time, the wizard robe was improved bit by bit, and hundreds of runes had been engraved. With a flash of inspiration, the last rune of the wizard robe was engraved, and all the runes officially took effect. The elemental energy quickly gathered towards the wizard robe, and the whole wizard robe became colorful. After a while, the elemental fluctuations finally calmed down. The wizard robe was filled with a strange breath at this time, and a sense of mystery came. Chip. Scan the data. Seeing the wizard robe completed, Allen's eyes were filled with joy. Suppressing his impatience, Allen ordered the chip. An invisible wave swept across the wizard robe. As time went by, Allen's anxiety became worse. Finally, a cold mechanical sound rang out. Scan completed. A translucent interface appeared in front of Allen. Item: Spider Silk Robe. Material: Enchanted Spider Silk. Thorium Alloy Silk. Level: Second level enchanted item. Physical defense: Light armor. Spell resistance 25. Additional effects: Clean, Tough, Hidden, Quiet, Recover. Speed up the recovery of physical strength and magic. Magic affinity: Reduces the difficulty of casting spells. Additional spells: Invisibility, once a day. Psychic defense, 3 times a day. Cat's Grace, once a day. Advanced Mage Armor, 3 times a day. Short Distance Teleport, once a day. Special effect: Accident. Allen looked at the results of the chip scan, and finally breathed a sigh of relief, and nodded with satisfaction. The physical defense of the wizard robe reached the level of light armor. Allen did not put too much effort into it. Light armor can defend against ordinary swords, but Allen's own defense is higher than this, so he does not care. As for the spell resistance of 25 points, he is quite satisfied with this value. The spells released by a first level wizard are around 100. Allen's own magic resistance is already 30. With this wizard robe, the spells of a formal wizard have been reduced by more than half, and the fire element with the highest resistance has basically been reduced by 80%. Combined with the dragon scale leather armor, the spells of a first level wizard are already difficult to hurt him. The wizard robe strengthens concealment. The effect is that, if you stand in the shadow, your figure will blur and blend into the darkness. With the invisibility spell, it is basically difficult for people to find your trace. Short distance teleportation can teleport people to any place within 5 kilometers. This is a spell to escape. The distance of 5 kilometers is enough for Allen to set up a temporary teleportation array to escape or hide. There is another effect. He has set the accident spell on the wizard robe, and most of the space is used to enchant this spell. This is an automatically triggered spell. If attacked by surprise, the accident spell will directly release the spell that has been prepared in advance. It can store 3 first level spells and will be used at the moment of activation. This is a life-saving spell developed by wizards, which is used to deal with sudden sneak attacks. The wizard robe is tailored to fit well, close-fitting, slender, with a vertical collar and high waist, which modifies the figure very beautifully. It is completely different from the cloak-style wizard robes worn by many wizards now. The tight design makes the movements flexible and does not feel bloated. The whole wizard robe is covered with silver lines, noble and elegant, and graceful. The black rune marks on the edge outline some mysterious patterns, which makes people look full of majesty. Allen quickly put it on to try. With a click, a life-size mirror composed of water element appeared in front of him. Allen nodded with satisfaction when he saw his image. After walking out of the house, Bess, who had just finished fertilizing the magic plants, saw Allen and was startled. Then a glimmer of light appeared in his eyes. The master is really getting more noble. Wearing this wizard robe makes the master more extraordinary. Haha. Allen laughed proudly. He walked over and rubbed Biss's hair. Biss is getting more and more talkative. Wearing the wizard robe, looking at the wizard in the mirror, handsome, elegant, and extraordinary, the more he looked, the more satisfied he was. The smile on his face never faded. He kept posing in various shapes and even used the photo technique to record his wonderful moments. It took half an hour for Allen to recover the calmness and wisdom of the wizard, control the real mask, activate the disguise technique, and redesign himself into an ordinary image. In a blink of an eye, Allen changed into the same style of clothing as other wizards. Next, the wizard robe was completed, and Allen needed a suitable weapon. He was not easy to use the wizard's staff. Besides, the staff was good for hitting people on the head. How could it compare with the cross sword? So he prepared to make a magic weapon. The previous cross sword was already better than nothing to deal with the increasingly powerful enemies. If it weren't for Allen's sufficient strength and the addition of high-level magic weapons, this cross sword would have been destroyed in the fierce battle. This time in the underground world, Allen obtained a lot of metal minerals and some rare mineral deposits. Forging a weapon is just a drop in the bucket. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.